You are now disrupting the order, and that pisses me off, and it's very obnoxious, and I have no reason to platform you anymore going forward. So consider this your last panel, Furby, just out of disrespect. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Raging Tomato. I am Sarah, bringing to you live another Moderator Monday, but on a Friday night. We've got a pop-up debate stream. I love these. And going forward, any 1v1s will be held on the weekend, so keep an eye out for the pop-ups like so. This evening, I have Melanie, the Cosmic Fox, and Rob Noir making his debut on a debate here. They will be battling out the question of, is gender different from sex? I'm interested to know what this difference may or may not be. Mel, if you'd like to kick off with your opening statement, please. You're muted.
Hello, yes. So first of all, thank you to Sarah for hosting this debate and to Rob for having this debate for me. For those who are interested, I think we're going to both roughly target 4 minutes, but not strictly, just for out of common courtesy. I am here tonight to take the affirmative, near absolutist stance on sex and gender are pretty much entirely different things. In fact, they're so different, it's hard to call them the same thing. Sex, well, here, let me give you just a one-liner, right? Sex is our physical attributes, gender is a mental attribute. So when it comes down to it, sex is a common theme throughout the planet, right? Plants and animals can have a sex and they are born with it. There's core biological sex, which is the fertilization between a small gamete and a large gamete. But there is also the sex of an object, and that is defined by whether or not a nominal, bimodally distributed set of characteristics of one set or another point to the production of small or large gametes. Gender is a set of intrinsic inclinations any human may have, which are enacted by that individual in accordance with social expectations about sexual presentation. So if I want to belong to a certain group, say women, I'm going to ask, well, what do women do in society? And I'm going to answer that with my behaviors. In fact, some even reduce it down to something called speech acts, but we can get there if we need. Proceeding to behave accordingly is an expression of desire to be a part of that group is what I'm essentially saying. A man is the performance of an individual, a man is the performance of an individual trying to be seen as a man. So I know that sounds circular, but that is actually how we use this. Why? Because these things change culturally, folks. And I forgot to run my timer, so I'm going to assume that was 2 minutes and for 2 more minutes.
You're fine.
The term man and woman are often, but not always, define what the other is not. So a woman does what a man doesn't. A man does what a woman doesn't. Nature's not really like that, by the way, and I think we'll get into this. There are 4 main facets of these sort of things that kind of come into this discussion. The first are physiological and bodily aspects. Most of that is just reproductive sex, but we can call some of that gender expression, like secondary sex characteristics. When I'm looking at someone on the streets to figure out what sex or gender they are, you can use either when figuring out their pronouns, then I am looking mostly at their secondary sex characteristics, right? Not their chromosomes, not their hormones, not their genitals, because we normally conceal those. I am looking at that in particular. So if we come into the question of what is a man or what is a woman, I think we'll have interesting conversations about what is a necessary condition. So gender and sex are distinct concepts, although they can be intertwined, although there are plenty of things that are intertwined that don't necessarily, that don't need to be delineated. So for example, there are certain things in sports, there are certain statistics that can be similar, but that doesn't mean that you get that statistic the same way. And so we don't consider all those sports to be the same category. I don't know if Rob's a sports fan. He seems like one to me, so I was trying to do a sports thing there. Were you keeping track, Sarah? How much longer do I have?
You go as long as you need. We're not worried about it.
You're fine. You're fine, Mel.
I mean, I have, okay, well, here. I'm just going to summarize, actually, because I want to get to the meat of this debate. So at the end of the day, these are things that aren't just different concepts. They occur in radically different ways. One of these things you were born with. The other thing, in terms of the question, what is a woman? You become over time. How can those possibly be the same concepts? And with that, I finished my opening or something. I don't know. My brain's not working well tonight.
That's okay, Furby. You're all good. Thank you so much. And Rob, to you.
All right. Thanks so much. Appreciate everyone being here. Happy to be here as an official debater for the first time. Hopefully the first of many times. So a topic that probably the people listening have heard been debated many times over. I don't find it particularly a topic where there's much new area to broach, but I always enjoy talking to someone because I find the specific definitions of these terms to be incredibly interesting. The term gender is now being used by people that are activists and engage in sort of a cultural Marxism in order to justify interchanging words when they find suitable to get cultural and political victories. They would have you believe sex is malleable, and they'll insert terms like men and women when it suits them to talk about sex when they're using those terms that they call gender. For example, we'll see throughout this debate that there are often people on the left that will talk about studies show that men are more likely to be aggressive than women. Studies show that women make 79 cents to the dollar than men. But then they'll tell you, well, actually, man and woman doesn't mean the sex characteristics. It means sort of self-referential, what you feel like, or exhibiting sort of the behaviors that you think that those sort of biological realities would be. They use this as a clever trick that they'll be able to attack men when they feel like it, which they view as an oppressor group, but then simultaneously say when pushed, oh, no, we're not attacking men. We're talking about the gender expressions that come therefore from. The idea that gender was different from sex is sort of a new concept that occurred in the 50s, and it came from queer theorists. We could get to the actual person that was most responsible for pushing this, but suffice it to say that it was a radical sort of Marxist-type belief that was used to try to subvert sort of the established orthodoxy as we saw a time when communism was failing and Marxism was failing spectacularly. There was no equivalent term that captured this distinction between biological sex and what they'll call social psychological aspects of identity, or which Mel has identified as sort of the idea of what people think is presented by the sex. It's sort of a crazy definition. It actually uses the term man in defining what a man is, which shows that that definition is ludicrous. All of these definitions will come down to sort of self-subjectivism. At the end of the day, Mel's going to be forced to argue that a man is basically someone who says they think they're a man. It might be the extra step of they think they're a man because they think they're exhibiting the characteristics that they feel men should exhibit, but nonetheless it'll be self-subjective, which is going to be defeating and proves the word to be meaningless. Nonetheless, we could see that before this sort of change in what gender was, pre-1950, the word was almost used always as sort of a grammatical category of the idea of sex. So when you hear people talking about it circa 1800, early 1900s, and all times before that, man was just an adult male and woman was just an adult female, and boy was a male that was not an adult and girl was a female that was an adult. These are the ways that terms was used, and in fact, one of the reasons that the word gender started to be used was because actually using the word sex was considered uncouth. But for all effects and purposes, gender and sex were the same thing. It was just grammatical differences in words like pronouns and how you would use it. And I would argue that the fact that that was radically changed by someone with a political and cultural axe to grind in the 50s would show that the true definition for the history of time was that there actually is no marital difference between the idea and the concepts of gender and
What's up, Unknown?
sex. It's just embraced by people that are pushing this sort of cultural and political values. Remember, if the term is subjective, if woman means anyone who calls themselves a woman, then the term becomes meaningless, because in communication, we have the sender and receiver. The real understanding of the importance of a word is that the receiver has an understanding of what that word means. And if the word only means what the sender thinks it means, then the receiver has no idea of what that word actually means. For example, we could say that language is a social construct, and so the term tall means anyone that's over 1'5" But then when you say, guess what? A tall guy stole my car, that means that I would have to assume that it's anyone from 1'5" to someone that's 7 feet tall. It renders the term completely meaningless. And language is important to have categories so that we as humans could understand each other. When people for political and cultural reasons seek to subvert that in order to make these terms, and the effect of it is that these terms then become meaningless because they just basically mean, well, man is what I think that a man does, then the term becomes meaningless, which further proves that I will be able to negate this, that actually gender is not different from sex. In almost all aspects in how we use the term man and woman, we see that the term is used in the useful sense, meaning basically grammatical categories of sex. For example, if we go through a litany of history and the studies that talk about the differences between men and women, none of them actually went through and asked all the people. For example, women make 79 cents, which is basically a bullshit stat anyways, to women. They didn't actually ask, oh, and by the way, do you identify as a woman? They were using sex. That's what the term meant there. So that's my opening statement, and I'll be happy to get into the rest of it.
Thank you to both of you. And kind reminder, everyone, we will go into open panel after this. We will have the debate. We will read and respond to super chats. And then we will open up the open panel dumpster fire per usual. Both of you, I leave the floor open.
Okay, so let me start with a rebuttal to everything you just said.
Everything? No, I'm just
yeah, I did take notes, and that's what I do, so that way we don't have to interrupt each other as much. So you said this is used by people who are activists and cultural Marxists. From what I've read, this was actually started more by postmodernism. Some of those people may have been Marxists, but definitely not all of them. Would you say that that might sound like a better word to you?
Postmodernism actually is sort of a philosophy that has to do with eliminating the idea of capital T truth. Would you agree with that? Just so we get our terms correct, is it fair for me to explain what I think postmodernism is? Is that okay?
It's about critiquing former notions of capital T truth.
Right, but they don't believe in sort of that there is a capital T truth. They think that truth is subjective. And so queer theorists like John Money that popularized this term, they were a queer theorist which talked about the importance of using activism in places like academia.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, I have
academia in order.
Yeah, I just got like I'm working, so I'm not. This is not me fucking. This is actually kind of more like a Casey stream where I'm just ignoring chat. I'm doing what I gotta do. But yeah, I have like a bunch of. So like in my playlist that I use for the stream, I have like a bunch of stuff that's like 15 to 20 minutes long. Then I have a lot of stuff that's more like 30 to 45 minutes long. Then I have stuff that's like hour plus, and I don't feel like fucking rummaging through all the short form content to entertain people, so I'm just going through the bulkier stuff, the hour plus stuff, and this was one that popped up. I mean, I really don't even care about the gender debate, really. I just wanted to see who this fucking Fox person is. That's my goal here. I mean, I've seen a million gender debates, and I've seen Rob Nord debate a bunch of times, but I did, the thumbnail had this fucking Fox thing, so I was like, let me see what this Fox thing's all about. But this is the Raging Tomato. I don't know if you've ever seen them, but she's like this. I don't know, maybe like a Wick TV type figure, but with less opinions. She's just more the platform for panels and debates. And I'm just listening to it while I get some work done. Our client is moving over to a new platform in the next few weeks, or not a new platform, but an upgraded platform from the same vendor. And we're in crunch time right now, so I'm just trying to get ahead of stuff I know I'm gonna have to do tomorrow. And just chilling and hanging out. But yeah, I'm really curious about this Fox thing. It's already off to a good start when they're talking about cultural Marxism. So yeah, just hanging out.
To subvert concepts of truth. So
first of all, Money. Can I just point some stuff out since that was a lot? First of all, Money only introduced the word used as we know it now to the scientific literature. It was used way before that by people like Judith Butler and stuff like that. And in terms of the people who were post-truth, the post-capital T truth group, some of them were postmodernists. It was a common theme in postmodernism, but they were discussing it. Not all of them were actually post-truth. Some of them still thought Can
you give me an example of one?
But for example, sex is an objective truth. Reproductive sex is an objective truth. No. We can look at someone's chromosomes. We cannot look at someone's gender. We cannot figure out what someone's gender is.
Just real quick, I promise I won't interrupt much here. You're saying You're not saying some
Oh, yeah?
postmodernists believed in capital T
What's it about? Sounds awesome already. What's it about?
truth. You're saying some truths postmodernists believe. That's the argument you're making?
Yeah, I'm saying
Okay.
saying they weren't against all truth. They
Gotcha.
definitely agreed with an objective reality, but they were trying to say like, well, for example, the category of man and woman, taking that for granted that assumes their sex right out the gate, that can be misleading. And
I know he's been going through the ringer lately. I haven't paid attention to it at all though. Every fucking channel that I fucking see has been talking about pirate software for the past like what 2 weeks, maybe 3. I don't know. And I know he was embroiled in some other stuff, prior to this. I have not followed it at all, to be honest. Like I've just been so wrapped up in work. I haven't even been listening to streams basically. So. Hold on. Let's see. Oh shit. Let's do it.
His shader.
Who decided the pirate software doesn't make good code? Doesn't code good, but it's mostly all lies, and they did some fucked shit up to his code, and then said it didn't work. I've been on board with the anti-pirate stuff, but this is British different. Okay. So.
We're gonna do the test. His shader versus pirate shader. He took that line of code out and made it always run. This is bad. This is bad faith. This is bad coding, bad faith. No one should take this person's fucking code review seriously ever fucking again.
Taken the lighting code and I've imported it into GameMaker. Now, the only things I've changed are this line right here, where it says it's just a conditional basically, and I've just replaced it with true, meaning it's always going to run.
Motherfucker calmly removing lines from Pirate's code that made the code only update when needed. Lying about what the line does. The fuck does it's just a conditional basically. What the fuck does that even mean?
What's up, Miss Nick?
Conditional on what? What does it do? Conditionally. It's actually verifiable.
So did you like sit down and make this, or did you kind of like go over this on stream and cut it up?
What that fucking line does. You don't need to even, you can just it's pretty basic. It is a basic, very basic thing that any fucking chatbot tell you what it does. There it is right there. There it is right there. It's verifiable.
Remember, the condition would significantly degrade performance since it would unnecessarily execute resource-intensive loops and calculations each frame. Oh wow.
The line stops it from running constantly. It's objectively the logic that stops it from doing the
Okay,
thing
gotcha.
you are about to say it does anyway.
The idea is pretty clear here. Just how absolutely abysmal this is for performance.
And that sick fuck is going to pretend like Pirate wrote a lighting script that needlessly runs a never-ending loop. It makes me feel like someone walked into my church and just started fucking smearing shit all over the walls. Ban these motherfuckers from ever coding again. Y'all desecrating a fucking holy place out in this shit for your hate, rage, dickfish, clout chasing. Fuck off.
Whoa. Is this like a new intro? I don't think I've ever seen this on a video you've done.
Nah, I was pissed. I was legitimately pretty angry at Pirate. I would say about a month ago. But I was on it. I was on it. This morning though, I was back. I was watching Pirate stream.
No, I'm not a software developer. This is Casey. Casey's in the chat right now. This is Casey's video. I did a video on the whole pirate software situation.
I can't explain that. They've somehow made Pirate, somehow in my mind, and now Pirate's like just a victim of these guys' fucking bad faith and cloud chasing as they lie to a bunch of people who have no possibility of determining the lies. Sure, they seem to have gotten the idea that he's also a horrible programmer who can't discern a for loop from a simple Boolean statement, things that you probably just pick up in your first couple days, like in class or even learning about programming, just like first day maybe, like literally first day, like kind of shit. And if you think that's good faith, that's on you, I guess. I don't see how you could lie about the code this badly, and this video is still up in 2 weeks. And I mean, this guy is a person who reviews code. This can't stay up. It's in 3 weeks it won't be up, guaranteed. Take it to the bank. Fucking take it to the bank. Woman, the one, true.
But we really don't. We throw it out in layers.
Dude, it has all these little sprinklings of classic like Casey Banger one-liners. I love it. Old intro. Oh, it's an old intro. Okay.
Surfer, working not only on his own hobby projects,
Oh,
who has years of
here's our crack bro.
services and
Crack
shader.
bro.
I decided to bring on a game dev who has years of experience in Game Maker, working
Yeah.
not only on his own hobby projects, but
Yeah.
also as a contractor for a studio
Oh my
in order to
God.
explain this fundamental concept.
Oh
A
wow.
little diagram. This is basically how his code works. Is he has a sprite that basically looks something like this. He has this, for every pixel in the sprite. So each one of these is a pixel.
Mhm.
It's basically going in the draw event and doing a collision check at like each pixel. And it's basically checking and checking and checking. And if the pixel is on the sprite, it'll draw it. This is the starting point over here. And the farther away the pixel is from the starting point, it like blends it differently, and that'll create some kind of gradients. But yeah, this is a terrible way of doing it. I drew like 5
It's not terrible.
pixels here. This is like super scaled up. A sprite like this would be like hundreds and hundreds of pixels. And to check each of them on the X and the Y like coordinate, like every single frame for every single like object doing this is gonna be like abysmal for.
And are all the objects doing it? Do they all have to be lit per pixel? Or can this script be put on an object like the character, like the thing that you care about? And obviously you're not going to put it on like static objects. But Pirates, the idea isn't crazy. It's well within the fucking realm of possibility. Unless you could tell me something of like why this is unbearably slow in Game Maker Studio or some shit like that.
Performance. The way that I had suggested would be better.
Yeah.
You draw them.
So he's saying this is how I do it. It's okay. And then it's fine. And now we're gonna get the test. See, he's not all talk. We're gonna do the test. His shader versus Pirate shader.
Performance, like drastically.
To really reinforce why this is
There we go.
a major issue in Pirate.
Here we go.
Level 5 Fish decided to profile it against his own
Oh, yeah.
surface-based implementation.
I'll drop it in the chat. Oh, there it is.
The comparison code is available on GitHub, linked in the description, and the full
Got it.
7-minute explanation by Level 5 Fish is available for my patrons and junior dev level channel members.
I would love to see that. Someone send that to me. I would love to see that because there's about to be some really fucking big questions. And like, how could you possibly have fucking missed this? there's about to be some really big fucking questions. So the idea that they spent like 7 minutes going through this code and they're
Here's the 2-minute summary.
So I've taken the lighting code and I've
Ah.
imported it into GameMaker. Now, the only things I've changed,
well, we already got a bit of a problem here. What game maker? You're looking at code for 2018. Did you find the 2017 version of GameMaker 1.4? The 2017 for which they don't sell licenses for it anymore, and it's sort of hard to get around. So we could do the test on the platform that he wrote the script for. I did. Took about 45 minutes. Wasn't easy. I had to go to some grimy places. Might have caught some. They're importing his 8-year-old script.
What are these grimy places you went to? Yeah, what's up, Conrad? We all know who this is. The man, the myth, the legend.
Into the current game maker.
Where were you hanging out on fucking kiwi farms or something? Where'd you get all this, Casey?
Yeah. I imported his lighting script into 1.4 to see if it was even compile. It doesn't. There's like 10 different lines that need to be replaced. And I don't know what the replacing would do. So
this line right here, where it says,
oh yes,
just things I've taken the lighting code and I've imported it into GameMaker. Now, the only things I've changed are this line right here, where it says, it's just a conditional basically. And
this is Pirate's code. So he's saying that he had to take this out.
this line right here, where it says, it's just a conditional basically, and I've just replaced it with true, meaning it's always going to run. And the reason for doing that is because whenever this was here, it would just flicker. So I just took it out. The other thing is I've added this variable here. This will allow us to track how many times a pixel is drawn. So
A Russian message board? Damn. They add flavor. Yeah, a little fucking Chef Bay, whatever his name is. Salt Bay.
So every time this line is run, it will add to this value here. If I press T, it'll display that value, and we can see how many times it's running.
And how many times it's doing a collision check.
I have this sprite here. This is a 800 by 100 sprite. So somewhat large, but not absurdly large, and is not something that's like unrealistic to see in actual projects by any means.
Now, when he's doing a per pixel lighting, the bigger it is, the worse it's going to be. A larger
to see in actual projects by any
Sure.
means. I've added it here to this room. It's using this lighting script to draw sort of a gradient of light over it. So we're going to see what happens when I run the project. We have kind of a gradient rectangle basically. But I don't know if you noticed something. We are getting less than 20 FPS. That code is running. The collision check and the drawing the pixels 80,000 times. I've also gone and created the system that I had previously described that involves using surfaces. So here it is the same sprite, the same rectangle, except it's using this other lighting system. This one right here that I've created. So let's see what happens when I run this project. As you can see, it looks basically the same, except, oh wow, our FPS is actually...
Yeah, it seems to be stuck at 60, almost like there's a cap on that. If you're benchmarking, you might want to remove the cap. It's strangely stuck at 60.
there. I'm actually going to run this in debug mode.
It's a cracked dev. This guy's cracked.
And debug mode will allow us to run a profiler. This was the lighting code created by Pirate Software. It is using 99.675% of performance, roughly. This is the implementation that I came up with, and I'll note it's really nothing complex. It's not super difficult, I think, for most people to make something similar. 0.238% performance. The idea
Wow.
is pretty clear here.
Wow.
Just how absolutely abysmal this is for performance.
I now want to move on to an issue that I would classify.
You remember that line that was like, that little guy
Dead on all morning.
How about that little fella?
Oh, that little guy. I wouldn't worry about that little guy.
Good enough for me. You're my man now.
That little guy.
This line right here, where it says it's just a conditional, basically. And
This is Pirate's code. So he's saying that he had to take this out.
this line right here,
Oh, you have a woman avatar as false advertising. That's yeah, that's our Caseykins. Jizbaku. Jizbaku. I think that's how I'm gonna pronounce that. Bamboozled by the thumbnail. Okay. Yeah, no, because you see probably Casey's avatar on the thumbnail. You think that's me? No. I'm up here. I'm up at the top.
where it says it's just a conditional, basically, and I've just replaced it with true, meaning it's always going to run. And the reason for doing that is because whenever this was here, it would just flicker. So I just took it out.
Okay, so he took out a lot of code below it. You know, what this line does. It wants to know. And the last time it did its thing and saved the sprite that it was working on and the image it was working on, is the same image that you want me to work on the same as last time? Is the same sprite this time the same as it was last time? It's asking, has something changed? Only if something changed, only then are we running through the light every pixel or do to the per pixel calculations. Only when something has changed. By removing that line there and just setting it to true, it never waits for something to change. You know, don't take my word for it. Don't take my word for it. Shouldn't have to. GPT could tell us what one fucking line in a script does. Current sprite's frame has changed, or the object's assigned sprite index has changed. When the walking animation, like that would be the sprite, or sorry, that would be the frame changing and like changing his outfit or something at the sprite changing. Anyway, so instead of they took that line of code out and made it always run. Removing this condition would significantly degrade the performance, since it would unnecessarily execute the resources intensive loops and calculations each frame. Including this check, which they removed, is a good optimization. Ensures the expensive per pixel lighting calculations run only when needed. I think I just like to realize why they did take it out. That stupid test that they showed with the percentage of their scripts compared to Pirates. The box sprite was never changing. It doesn't have any animations, and it's not changing.
Right, political consultant career in his future? Definitely. I'd hire him. Would you? Would you, Grand?
The light wasn't changing. The box lighting was never being updated in Pirate script because I didn't need to update. It wasn't doing anything. It was taking 0% of the resources. Like, why the fuck was their script like running even though it was nothing changed? Like, why was their script doing anything? The original result of that test was 100 to 0. Is 100% their script relative to Pirate script 0? Outrageously large. It was just sort of large.
This is a 800 by 100 sprite, so somewhat large.
No, I can't.
It's the box is 800 pixels.
Oh shit, Queeman popping up in the algo there. Nice.
On the width. And for every of these pixels, it's going to go 100 in the height direction. 800 times 100. It's 80,000. This number, even if you hadn't decoupled the fucking renderer from the physics engine, even that was always going to say 80,000. It's always going to say however many pixels there are. That's what that fucking number represents. That's the fucking thing that you calculated. You can't even do the thing that you try to do. This is your fucking code review. This is your debunk. This is your big time, your big call out. This is your shit. You can't even fucking count the variable right. You don't even know the fuck's going on in the code.
Nice. He's fucking getting edgy with it. Start advertising his political sales so he can get a midterm candidate to hire him. Yeah. You need Casey poll. Indicate calculations, nothing? Hey, look. Conrad, if you want an explanation about this, go to Jizbaku, alright?
This guy's cracked. We're not done. We're not done. No, Jesus is gonna come back. He's gonna get it. You gotta get on. You gotta get in on this. This part, bro, is like your shit should be like look nicer. The only real question is, at some point, did Pirate have to go back and fucking bulldoze his fucking giant array? Or, you know, at some point, did that become fucking unbearably unbearable to work with? And did that cost him a bunch of time or something? We don't know. He doesn't know. Bro doesn't know. Else fucking good enough is fucking always good enough. Don't you ever fucking forget it. Perfection is the enemy of completion. I never fucking finished that quote right. Fuck perfection. Fuck perfect. Get her done. This motherfucker doesn't even know the fuck programming.
Yeah, that's what post-production support is, you know? You gotta get a minimum viable product into production, and then work out the kinks from there. You know? I wish I was a coder. I mean, I'm not a coder, but I've definitely programmed before with, you know, the Java and Python and other classes that I took for my degree. But I'm not like a coder. I couldn't sit here and fucking, you know, go over most of this shit, you know. I can understand, you know, programming basics like validations, loops, things like that, like, you know, declaring variables, recursion, you know, like all kinds of stuff that I know is applicable. You know, I could have a layman's conversation about coding, but once you start diving into these deep fucking layers, I couldn't possibly help you out.
Like, you didn't know the state of the fucking code.
As art rich as this, and a lot of people said that they are everywhere. I brought this up in my original video, and a lot of people said that the magic numbers I referred to weren't really magic numbers because you can use IntelliSense to tell what the actual parameter names are associated with those numbers. Putting aside the fact that nobody should need to hover over a method for 2 seconds to tell what the actual parameters stand for, let alone do this for over 20 methods, magic numbers in their purest form are everywhere in Thor's code. There's at least half a dozen in each file, maybe even more. Take a look at the 100 million here for active color, or the 765 that aren't really explained. In many places where Thor... or the 765 that aren't really
as bad and as stupid and ridiculous and but as the fucking we're gonna take out this line of code and just like as stupid as that was, like there's actually nothing as damning against this guy's programming chop than this one. Let me just mention that the percent sign there. Don't get the wrong idea that I don't know fucking game maker language. I fucking never worked with this shit before. That percent sign is going to mean the same thing. That percent sign is a mod. And when he's calling out the magic numbers, his fucking numbers that just I'm just gonna put a number here like that. I think 100 million. We might get to that, but I'm gonna call it the 765 here. Just like, it's just a random 765. But he doesn't call out the 255. I think most people know what that 255 means. You don't have to be a programmer.
Is that like the hexadecimal limit? I think it goes from like 0 to 255.
Could have spent some time in Photoshop or something else or whatever. This is representing a color, and the first number is R red, G green, B blue. 255 is the max. If it's 255, 255, 255, it's white. It's 0, 0, 0, it's black. Like, you don't have to be a programmer to know that. I mean, but yeah, you could just
It's RPG max value.
You didn't
color.
mention like 255 being.
Yeah, okay, so that's what it means in that context. But I think what I was saying is like in terms of hexadecimal, translation or whatever, it goes like 0 to 255 because the hexadecimal value would be like 0 to 99 or something like that. It's not better to create constants with names instead of putting hard numbers in code. I would think so. But for some of these functions they might be calling, you know, I don't know. One mic. Okay, gotcha.
Being a magic number, right? This is not the magic number. It's just it's a constant that everyone knows. You don't need to label it somewhere like the max color value or whatever. I mean, you just put it in because you see it, you know what it is. It's like
there you go. Their case is explaining it for you. Yeah.
You see it, you know what it is. But that's 765. To me, you don't work with like shaders that often. Maybe you don't need a good programmer doesn't need to do some math or whatever because of that mod is right there. A mod is like seconds on some sort of clock or these like digits or whatever, and then you got like a value that's like 2279er.
Niner.
Now, if you wanted to get the minutes,
I love it. He threw a niner in there.
Yeah, this is seconds. If you want to get the minutes, you would divide by 60. Right? You divide by 60, and you would throw away the remainder, and that's the number, the minute value, right? Where the fuck it is? 37. But if you weren't interested in minutes, you're only interested in seconds, and you're only interested in the remainder. That's what you mod. That's for the mod. So then we're going to mod 60. You really don't have to be good at math to do programming with it, but you really should know what this means. You really should know what this means. It's not. I don't fucking know fucking game magic fucking game gay creator on this shit. It's, you know, she's sharp, but I don't know what's important is if you didn't put two and two together on the 255 plus 255 plus 255 equals 765. This is a very familiar pattern. You're going to keep what's the left of the I got my mouse now. You want to keep what things that are going on to the left of this here. You're gonna add a number to it to keep it positive, basically. And because you're interested in the mod, as long as you're adding a number that is divisible by 255, as long as you add to this number, as long as the numbers that you add here are going into the minutes, because you're going 60 seconds, you're just adding 60 seconds, adding 60 seconds, as long as everything you add is going to the minutes. But you're only interested in the seconds. So you're going to add a number for whatever reason here, it's to keep it positive, but you're going to add a number to keep everything positive. And as long as you're adding a number that is divisible by the mod, then you're never actually changing the value that you actually care about. The minutes is going up. The minutes are going up every time you do it, but so this he points out 765 like it's a magic number. But if you understand what's going on in this equation and why it's going on, if you are actually a good fucking programmer, it's obvious why the 765 is there, because 765 divided by 255 is a whole number, a whole fucking number, not point something. It's divisible. It's also an not extremely. If you're doing like shader shit a lot, you see it. This blank mod blank thing when it's a familiar pattern. The idea that like you need to know what the mod is because you're the code genius. This is a huge indictment on this guy thinking he's good at coding. If you recognize that as a mod right there, then you instantly recognize that 265 probably goes under 255, and that's why it's there. Like, but if you don't know what that mod is, if you don't know what's going on if you don't know what the fuck's going on in this bit of code right here, you have no fucking idea. And you don't have to know stupid fucking game maker language or whatever, because basically it seems like a shitty language. It's just like missing a bunch of shit. That's basically what it seems, what it appears to be. It's pretty close to C# actually. That I'm thinking about it. Yeah, it's just missing like 80% of the stuff. But once you see the mod, you know it's there and you know what it is. The idea that he pointed at that and said that was a magic number. And by the way, that million, I don't know or that 100 million, I don't know. I don't care. I actually don't. I really don't. Or max. I think it looks like a max number. I think that's what you like. But the only thing that's important is that like Pirate looks at that and like recognizes why it's there. And maybe people who actually know this fucking shitty language recognize it's there. You got no context. You threw it in with a 765 and you're just a fucking idiot. You didn't know what that fucking meant. You don't know the language. You don't know the programming language. What the fuck are you fucking going after a guy? You've never coded in this before. You don't know what that shit is. You don't know what it's constant. Man, I hope you got all the views in. I hope you got all the views, cashed in on the pirate hate brigade. You guys turned it. You turned it. It's now his fucking redemption arc. Because you fucking retards had to fucking go after him in horrible. This is bad faith. This is bad coding, bad faith. No one should take this person's fucking code review seriously ever fucking again. Not ever. One, he's legitimately incompetent. He's actually fucking legitimately incompetent. So he brings in a fucking retard bro who says he's fucking cracked out in programming language that can't even fucking count the variable right. I didn't even know what the fuck's going on with one variable that he inserted. He didn't know what the fuck's going on with it. That's his cracked out friend. Yeah, you could just fucking criticize people's code, like the little nitpick, but it's really just like what you prefer. You prefer that 100 million to say something. What the fuck? What you prefer, motherfucker? Are you working on it? Is this your code? You gotta dig through it? Honestly, like criticizing others, like going after another like coder bro's code is like it's taboo if you're not doing it. Like everyone loves tips. Like no, I love tips. But you see, since some shit I'm doing is like, it's better if you do it that way. Some people prefer like readability. Some people like are always like, gotta be running the fucking best. Other bros just be like physically code, less code better. Less code better. You got everything fucking smushed up into some fucking bizarre fucking link queue shit. You got to fucking look up on a website even what the fuck it means. Shit, but I look at it fit all in one line. That's 30 lines of code right there. One line. That's a one-liner. Some people don't, if that's what you like to do, it's good. Put it in stone. Put a little comment on it. Look, that's what you like to do. That's not what I like to do. That's what code reviews end up being half the time. Honestly. Not that I don't like them. I watch a couple of like code review bros. They don't fucking go out fucking maliciously the Jesus bro, like the first, he opened up like the first video, maybe the second one too. I'm just a rant about the stop stealing games thing. Just a fucking vicious rant. Like there is no fucking question about what's going on. Like you got it out. You got it out for him. You got it out for him, and you fucking did a horrible fucking code review where you exposed your fucking own ignorance. That's truth. That's what just fucking happened. Most of it. Half of it. Let's say half. So you went after him maliciously. I swear to Christ, he doesn't bug me anymore after I watch these videos. This is only one of the three bros. This is only one of them. This is the worst one. It's fucking and like you got like Destiny and fucking Chud and they're watching it and I don't blame them. It's just like they just have to take these people's word that Pirate is sucking a dick here, but he's not. And we're looking at 8-year-old code that this bro doesn't have any context to judge. He doesn't even know the language. He's just fucking making shit up. And but cash in on the fucking the pirate bad narrative. I was on it. I got knocked off. I'm off. I'm out. I mean, I wasn't making videos about him. I'm out. Y'all been so ridiculous. You made him out to be like normal, and like the actual fucking being victimized by like extremely bad faith actors. You're not gonna be lecturing Pirate on like industry standards, right? Obviously, he's been in the industry. Is he the guy you want? Put Pirate on that. He's done that shit, but no, he's probably not that guy. He's probably not the guy. He's probably not that guy. But you're not gonna fucking lecture him on fucking industry standards. One of these fucking jokers are like acting like fucking Pirate doesn't know what a fucking for loop is. Are you fucking kidding me? You think he's just been shoveling him money for like 22 years? You never fucking picked up the idea what a fucking for loop is? I assume he went to college too. It's just a fucking ridiculous note. It's that guy is super bad faith. Super bad faith. You did it. You did it. You did it. Fucking ruined it. You fucking ruined it. Pirate's back. He's back. Redemption. It's the redemption arc. That's it. Fuck you, Jesus. You're a shitty fucking coder, and you shouldn't have a fucking channel about fucking teaching other people how to code, you fucking piece of shit. Peace.
Oh man, that was fun. What's the comments? I wish I could block channels. Anime profile picture and won't show face. Opinion irrelevant. Amazing. Not only that, it's a VTuber model of a woman, and this is obviously a dude speaking. Y'all make some really valid points. I guess this guy didn't actually edit Pirate's code and then claim it doesn't work after breaking it. You have convinced me. Yeah. Pirate's a rack fuck who should admit an L every once in a while. But they're flat lying about his code. They legit broke it themselves and then claimed it doesn't work. This Code Jesus guy is doing worse things than Pirate has ever done. And yes, Pirate should finish his shitty game or give refunds, but the reason he hasn't is because he chooses to stream for 12 hours a day, not because he can't code. No. Do you even watch CJ's entire video? There's a 2-hour version where I go through his videos and explain all the wrong things. For example, how Struxton exists in 2017-2018 GML. So why point out that Pirate should be using Strux in his April 2018 code, and also I ran Pirate's code working as intended, and surprised it works without removing the code they removed. What part do you think I misrepresented? In that video, I watched him plainly and in detail explain why and how he was making his valid points. He showed his evidence and work answers. Here, I watched something literally struggle just to talk about what's even going on in the video. You watch someone lie to you, and then here you watch someone actually showing objective evidence, proving that the line he took out actually broke the code. Don't believe anyone, not even this video, is my motto. Casey's getting roasted, bro. Roasted. Oh, man. Casey's spirit enters the body of Voosh. Look, I'm gonna play around on this for a few minutes, and then I gotta get back to work. All right. So remember, remember what my goal is here. I gotta focus.
Yeah, I mean, it's really funny because I'm over here.
Just, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna Here, wait, hold on. I should probably move my webcam down because I'm like blocking their faces. I've been doing it the whole video. I just want to say, do you think it maybe speaks a little bit to the fact that we have a rape culture when we put 6 people in a room together to talk about Me Too, and the 4, when they're like, hey,
Wait, is it the same clip we watched the other day?
who of you have experienced sexual assault? And the 4 women sit down and they've all
This is okay. I see why you wanted to play this.
all been raped and they all can barely choke out a coherent sentence. Like, do we think this perhaps maybe slightly speaks to the fact that there's a problem? Like, Me Too has gone too far. False allegations are ruining people's lives. Okay. Who among you have experienced sexual assault? And like every woman in the room starts crying? Like, almost every female friend I have has been the recipient of sexual assault or violence or rape or whatever at some point in their lives. Seriously, it's such a common thing. I think 1 in 4 is probably understating it significantly. I wouldn't be surprised if the rate for sexual assault on women over one's lifetime was as high as 1 in 3 or 1 in 2. We just don't know because nobody fucking reports, because reports aren't taken seriously. That's what Me Too is about.
You're like, I don't think things are on the same level, but things impact you in like bizarre ways. But yeah, like because the perpetrator wasn't white, and because he was like, I'm, you know, part of like a certain religion.
Wait, are we being real?
And the police were basically just like, we can't because of cultural differences, which I don't feel like is such a good.
What? Bullshit! Are you fucking kidding me? Did she turn her fucking rape confession onto how the rape refugees, fucking Ahmed Muhammad, raped her and the police were like, oh, we can't persecute brown people? Bullshit! Bullshit!
Yeah, Conrad wanted you to wanted you to see that. Okay, we watched it the other day, and he was like, "Yeah, this one's for Casey." Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really funny because.
Yeah. Casey's spirit enters the body of Vosh. All right, not getting hung up on fucking grooming gangs tonight. Okay, I gotta work, so we'll keep tabs on the comment section once in a while. We'll come back to the video and check out the roasting session that Casey's getting right now. This is pretty funny. What's up, Mida? How you doing? What's my work? I'm a Scrum Master and a functional analyst, so I work with a team of developers and architects and other functional analysts to customize and modify enterprise resource planning products for the government. And they're doing like a platform upgrade in a couple weeks, so we're all in like crunch mode right now. Yeah, Scrub Master, yeah. Okay, let's get back to the Fox. Bravo, Casey, though. Bravo. Love it. I think I like this form of video better, where you're kind of like just, you know, freeballing it a little bit. Because you get those like classic Casey one-liners in there. Whereas I think when you script the video that you're working on, you probably don't insert those Casey one-liners in as organically as you would if you were just making a video. So I do like this way. I think it's just a fun approach. But we'll keep tabs on the comments. We'll come back tomorrow and see what they look like. But yeah, I don't think even one person in here is like supporting you. But yeah, we were watching a Rob Nord debate. Something about gender. It's like the 9 millionth gender debate. But the only reason I wanted to watch this is because I was curious about this Fox person. I wanted to see what their personality was like. I don't know if they were like a VTuber or a furry or like some kind of Twitter bestial zoophile or some shit, you know. Radical neighboring? No, not right now, because you would want me to pay attention to that, and I'm not paying attention. I'm just listening to this kind of stuff on the side. like what I'm trying to do right now is knock out a bunch of like the hour plus videos that I have in a playlist that I haven't watched yet. It's an evil toy, yeah. We'll see. But yeah, like I said, they're doing, it's like the, you know, gender debate number 9,000,047. But I was just curious about, well, first of all, it's Rob Noor, which is Midas' best friend. And secondly, this furry zoophile person here. I don't know if they're a zoophile. I retract. But this furry tar, let's call it that, furry tar. I was curious about, you know, what kind of arguments they would bring to the table.
Sex is something that applies to more than just humans, yet man and woman is a human-specific category. So to try to relate that to sex could be erroneous. For example, taking for granted that all people who have a certain gender will identify with their genitalia.
Okay, so if I could rebut this. First, I think the vast majority of postmodernism, from my limited redneck understanding of it, admittedly, by no means am I a big Michel Foucault understander, but I think that a lot of it has to do with sort of the rejection of capital T truth, and a lot of it's rooted in things like Marxism. Queer theory itself was attempting to subvert common accepted ideas of what truth was, and it sought to break people in sort of a oppressor versus oppressed mindset. We can see that this is done through all sorts of categories, whether it be through race, through economics, through ability, through biological sex, etc. And in that subversion, it sought to create activists and use language in order to control a narrative. So I guess my first question to you would be, if there is such utility in the way that John Money and the postmodernists, or the queer theorists, however you want to put it, I'm not really interested in the semantics of that. If there's such utility in the way that they have changed this form, one, will you admit that the word...
Right, Rob, just think it's bad faith. Even a lot of the Crucible community I've interacted with since have actually got... Really? Oh. Interesting. Who do you think is more bad faith? Rob or BPF? Andy Pants had just debate with Rob on banning yoga. Rob's more bad faith than... Wow. Okay, interesting. With Rob on banning yoga pants and bold, showing compression pants in public one day. Oh, really? Andy Pants? Are you sure it was Andy Pants, like the gaming channel?
Gender ultimately meant the grammatical expression of sex for the vast majority of human history. And second,
wow,
how
okay.
was there a lack of utility of that?
Yeah, we'll definitely check that out.
Term before it was changed by these queer theorists?
So first of all, no, I will not agree that that's how it started. It actually started as another way. Like if you look at the term genre and stuff like that, it came from a lot of similar root words for kind or category and stuff like that. So it is of itself a category, and it's always been used as a category for utility. You said something interesting to me,
right? A grammatical
common
category.
Ideas. Sorry, I just want to respond to everything you said as a whole, because I'm not interested in debating postmodern ideas specifically at the moment. You said common ideas. I don't think all of these ideas proved to be useful once we had better information. Like, for example, the information that not everyone might identify with their genitalia. Well, that's useful because then we don't make statistical or categorical errors. Do you see what I mean?
Well, but no, because what you'll see is the way that that's used when we're talking about studies and we're using in academic literature, straight down to colloquially the way the average people use the term, is using the term as literally connected to biological sex. For example, are you aware of studies that are cited by feminists all the time that say that women make 79 cents to the dollar than men?
So... Okay,
just a yes or no would suffice for now, because I want to expound upon it.
But I have a counterpoint.
Okay, that's fair.
I am familiar, but I have a counterpoint.
That's totally fair, and I promise to give you a chance to issue that counterpoint. Well, given that, if those terms clearly aren't being used, you're not suggesting that those studies asked each individual in those studies whose salaries they were looking at how they identified, are you?
No, I think you're making a different argument. I think you're actually arguing that none of these studies that you're citing conform to that postmodern ideal, which is true. There's still a lot of studies that can be outdated that are even coming out recently by that standard. So it's not a ubiquitous thing in the literature by any sense.
But the problem you're going to have is every time we use that term in some sort of utility where we're seeking to understand pragmatic differences between outcomes between men and women, and almost every time it's using that term using biological sex. And if that's the most common way that it's used, even in the academic literature, certainly it'll be easy for me to prove that outside the scope of sort of radical left-wingers, that's the way that the average people are using it. So why should we assume that because some radical people want to subjectively say, well, when it suits us politically or culturally, we think that it means different than sex? But when we're using studies that imply that women are disadvantaged, and we want to argue from that sort of left-wing cultural Marxist perspective that men are oppressors and women are the oppressed, then it's okay for us to use those terms meaning biological sex.
Well, because what they're tackling, what these people are trying to tackle is an issue. It's an issue that leads to statistical problems, medical problems, all sorts of systematic issues for trans and gender nonconforming people, where when you take for granted that calling someone a woman means they're a reproductive woman with XX chromosomes specifically and lots of estrogen flooding through her system, as well as being fertile, then you not only kind of stereotype that category and make essential claims about them that are not necessarily backed up by your literature, but also you basically erase those people, right? Now, would you agree that, like, if we were to erase all white men, just like pretend like they don't exist in any of the medical literature and stuff like that, you know, just never mention them, that might be a bad thing?
But that's not what's happening. It's not erasure like that. For example, studies that reference men and women aren't talking about all sorts of other subcategories, but that doesn't mean we're erasing them. For example, a study between a man and woman might not take into account men who are schizophrenic. So are they being erased because this study had to do with men and women? The fact that there are people out there with mental disorders that think that they are in the wrong body biologically, my heart goes out to those people, but by no means does that mean they're being erased, because we have a utility for terms that we've had for years and decades in both the academic literature and in colloquial sense, and we all understand what those words mean, but a couple people felt left out because they have some sort of disorder, and so we have to remake our entire language to suit them. And we see the negative ramifications of that. Now we've catered to this small mind. Real quick, please.
Can you
let him finish his thought? Let him finish his thought, and then the floor is back to you.
And so we can see how that control. So we can see how that control of language has helped lead to the catering of this small minority population that basically have mental disorders, to the point where we're actually saying that biological men get to compete in female sports, that we have to change our entire structure of the separation of men and women in places like restrooms, that were said that we have to get rid of our cultural norms. All of this started with a control of language, which you're incapable of defending that there's utility in that.
So a lot of that was actually non sequitur, because it does not follow that those things necessarily create issues.
We could argue.
But I'm going to address specifically the need for us to actually not erase those groups. So when you have a categorical error in your research, you specifically do not include research on groups that are a significant variable to your research, then you're actually missing data. And that data could give you different results. And the fact that it could give you different results also means that the results that you got without that data could be wrong. And so it makes sense that you actually want to include that data. This is not catering to an entire group. This is recognizing other variables that may exist in an equation.
So if I choose to subjectively define the term man as people with small gametes who don't have schizophrenia, and I say that women are all other groups, and then I say the fact that you're unwilling to accept that means that when you do a study that says men are more likely than women to do X, that's erasing biological males with schizophrenia. Do you see the absurdity of that?
Well, it's absurd to say that, like, the category would involve people who don't have schizophrenia, because it does not follow that sexual reproductive function has anything to do with schizophrenia.
But it doesn't follow that. That's irrelevant to the question. You have a subjective.
No, but, like,
it
you
is.
created...
I'll explain why. The metaphor still works because your objection to it's irrelevant to what I'm discussing. Because by the same token, the idea of how you subjectively feel the expression of a normal man and woman is, so you subjectively call yourself, has nothing to do with the physical nature of what the term man and woman have meant throughout history.
So if you
including
want
all
me
of
to
these
agree
studies.
that your unrealistic hypothetical is ridiculous, then yes, that is ridiculous. But it's not realistic because that's not what you're going to see in the literature, since a huge part of being a scientist means observing which variables do apply and which ones don't.
Show me a study.
So if you were doing a study on schizophrenia and sex differences, that might be a good way to control for a certain group to see if there's anything that pops out from the other group, which are the men who don't have schizophrenia as well as women, just in case there's any sort of covariable there. But you might want to have a hypothesis for why that would be relevant. So what you did there is essentially straw person the scientific method.
I didn't straw person the scientific method. Now, notice what you did there was you just directly connected sex and sexual reproduction with the concept of gender. So
yes, they are interconnected.
Please. So
but as I pointed out in my introduction,
You got it. You owe her an interruption back.
You got it then.
Go ahead, Mel.
they are interconnected, but as I pointed out with the sports stuff, just because things are interconnected does not mean they're the same.
So when you said in your opening statement that, quote, you led off saying they're entirely different, that's clearly not the case. And any expression that people any expression that people try to say that there is sort of a difference between biological sex and the concept of gender, right? Most of the time what they'll say is something like a definition you gave, your proprietary definition that says what has to do with what people think men traditionally do. We'll get to problems with that definition in a second. But notice it has to do with the subjective idea
that was an
of
example,
please.
by the way. That was really bad faith.
Hold on. Let him finish his thought, Mel, and then we'll turn it right back to you.
Right. So what you see then is that, like, when you get right down to it, it's always an expression of what we assume the normal expression of biological characteristics are, concepts of male and female. So even with your definition, you could see that it's intrinsically tied to sex, which it had been throughout all of history. And then you make this mistake of saying, yes, but there's no reason that we shouldn't change terms if we have more specific terms, and that's what the academic literature has done. No, it hasn't done that, other in the concept of trying to use this as a subversion for the utility in this. But the same sorts of people that use these arguments that are cultural Marxists or people on the left, as soon as it comes to wanting to attack the biological males, what they do is all of a sudden do studies on men and women that go back to that definition. So I'll ask you already conceded the vast majority of studies that are comparatively discussing women being disadvantaged are talking about biological sex and the term gender as an expression of that. Can you name me one study that's talking about women being oppressed where it says that there is a difference in outcomes between men and women that's actually went and asked each individual person in that study how they self-identify? Or are they using it as an expression of biological reality?
So I find that to be somewhat irrelevant because I'm not actually making the case that the literature is perfect. So if the literature were imperfect, that wouldn't destroy any of my claims. You said I had a proprietary definition, and then you used a very cherry-picked point from my definition that was actually supposed to be an example to give you better comprehension, which you seem to be struggling with. So here, let me reread the first part without that, so that way you can have better comprehension. Gender is a set of intrinsic inclinations any human may have, which I'll add to this, which align with the sexual schema. Keyword there, schema, so maybe Google that if you don't know it. But these are enacted by that individual in accordance with societal expectations about presentation, and they do that to belong to the group that they feel inclined to belong to. The terms man and women are often, but not always, defined by what the other is not. Is there any part of there that you're lost on?
Yeah, it's irrelevant to what I said was with the way you defined man. So you read how you define gender, but based on that definition, implying it, then you went through how to define specific gender.
Because I can't tell you, because these things
yes
are very
or no. I'll just
incredibly...
ask you yes or no. Did you say the definition of man is someone who feels that some form of this, I didn't get the exact wordage, but something to do with someone who's expressing what they think the physical characteristics of a man is? Wasn't that basically your definition?
I will read this example. This example, it's kind of like a derivative definition, but it's not really a definition of man. A man is the performance an individual does to be seen as part of a socially designated group defined by the enacted rituals that we commonly associate with men as a whole. And I know that's a big string of words, but all that's basically saying is if society says men does X and person feels like they should belong to group X based on their intrinsic identity, then they're probably going to perform those things. Now, the reason I can't tell you what those rituals can be, because these vary incredibly by culture, not just from like one society to the next or one nation to the next, but down to the local level. Even if you go to the city in the same state, you can find different forms of gender presentation that you wouldn't find out in the country.
Okay, so just getting back to, if we look at what the question of the prompt was, it's, is gender different than sex? You started to talk about when I said that it was sort of a grammatical expression of biological reality of sex. One of the arguments you made that was that, you know, the scientific literature doesn't go this way, and academically it would be a reason to not prefer the sort of definition that I'm throwing out. And yet you yourself are incapable of citing one academic study, not even one, in which the term man is woman is used as you're suggesting when it comes to discussing the differences in outcomes between men and women. And you try to hand wave that away and say, well, just because it's not perfect. It's not that it's not perfect. You can't even give one example. I could give you example over and over again of studies that have referenced outcomes between actions in prison, actions when it comes to sexual assault, actions when it considers violence, the amount of pay that men and women, pay disparities that they have, the amount of hours that they work, on and on and on. Every one of those studies are going to be based on using gender and the term man and woman based on the sexual reality of if they're male or female. They did not go and ask each individual in that, oh, we say men commit 80% of violent crimes. So when we arrest them as we're taking the statistics, we say, excuse me, do you identify as a man? If all of a sudden, all of these people say, you know what, I see an advantage in saying I identify as a woman, then the statistics may say something like women commit 60% of violent crimes. Now, it's not that the biological reality has changed, and the utility of a study like that would be to understand the actual pragmatic things that occur in the real world so that we could attempt to have an understanding and solution. But because of your proprietary definition and people that push those things out there, now those studies lose all meaning because we have no effing clue what we're talking about, because the term just means, well, this person that committed a crime subjectively views themselves as a gender, and we have no idea what the connection to biological reality is. Can you, like, the fact that you can't even give one study seems to suggest to me that you've lost the debate.
Plenty of studies, just not.
Last point real quick. You can't cite even one study of sort of pragmatism in talking about the outcome differences between men and women. Seem to suggest to me, as I suggested in my opening statement, that even with the academic literature and with studies, gender is not different than sex.
So, sorry, I was trying to be silly there, but then I fucked up. So,
I was like, is there a piano?
No, it's not, because for one thing, the fact that I can't provide a study within your very narrow conditions only proves that there's not a study for your narrow conditions. I have plenty of studies for the other thing. A great study that actually talks about everything you're referring to is called What is Gender Anyways? A Systematic Review of the Literature. It basically talks about how to solve this problem and identifies that it's not a simple solution. Now, I could just as easily ask you something that you can't live up to, like show me a study that took a significant sample size and asked people, do you identify with your genitals, and got 100% yes every time. Because if they don't, then that might mean that there can be an incongruence between identity and genitals. That incongruence between identity and genitals is proof that identities and genitals are not always the same thing, and therefore it might be safe to surmise that they're not at all the same thing.
Well, no, it's going to be two completely different things, because what I'm talking about is the way that the authors of these studies that are trying to look at differences between men and women pragmatically are using the term. And the only way that it has utility, and the default way that everyone without batting an eye understands when they say there is a difference between arrest rates or labor rates or finance rates, etc., we all understand that implicitly, without a question, that that's talking about men are biological males, women are biological females. We all understand that. It would not be pragmatic to do any sort of study like this if the definition of man and woman was how do the people self-identify. It would be impossible to do those studies, and they would lose all utility. And language is important because we need to have these categorizations so we could find the most close path to objective truth in the real world. If these languages are self-subjective, then it loses all meaning, and any sort of study like that would be irrelevant. You can't give one example. Then you say, oh, but I can ask you things that you wouldn't give an example of, and the
That's
study.
just wrong. I have plenty of examples. I mentioned one study already.
Please. Then when you say, I can name things that you can't ask, can you say that there are people that 100% say that a study that shows 100% of people identifies their genitalia? It's irrelevant. No, I will completely concede that there are plenty of people that don't identify with what their biological sex is. So, doesn't change the different definition of man and woman. That means that they have some sort of mental or physical illness that we should talk about. Just like we wouldn't say, well, a person that has multiple voices in their head, we now have to say that humans have multiple voices. It could be 1 through 4, and we have to change the language of what we're talking about when we talk about humans. Elsewise, it erases people that are schizophrenic. It's nonsensical. Yes, there are clearly people that can identify however they want. Similarly, I could say to you, I identify as a thin, tall, muscular man, right? And if you would say, okay, what do those words mean? We'll say tall, muscular man, right? You would say, well, this is what tall, muscular man means. And I'd say, can you show me a study that 100% that only tall, muscular men identify as tall, muscular men? Oh, you can't? Then that means that the definition of tall and muscular is inaccurate, and therefore we must change it. Quickly, you can see how all language then becomes meaningless because the words just become subjective, and when we use any descriptive term, it's completely irrelevant because all the descriptive term will ever mean is what I myself claim that those things mean.
And let me interrupt for just a moment, Mel, before you respond. I do want to point out you both are taking long time frames to kind of spit out. I'm allowing it because you're both doing it, and I'm okay with it. As long as we are not interrupting and it's pretty equalized, you are very balanced on the as far as the mic is concerned. So continue on. Mel, to you.
I'm personally okay with interjecting if I say something wrong about your claims or something like that, because I don't want to be wrong about your claims. I do have a long response again.
That's fine.
So you said, sorry. So first of all, you said I had no studies that I posted. I posted a link in the side. Again, it's called What is Gender Anyways? Let me get back to the top so I get that right. A review of the options for operationalizing gender. Now I have to get back to the part I highlighted. Oh, and did I mess that up? Yes, I did. Very good. Basically, God damn it. And I tried to copy and paste it in the side too. So I just need a moment to find that section again.
As you look for that, I'll just say quickly, as you look for that is not the sort of study that I was talking about. Yes, there are academics that
it
are
literally
sort of
talks about, no, it is because it literally talks about the importance of doing what you're talking about, the utility of having gender.
Okay. That could be fine. It could say that. I'm asking you to provide me a study that talked about pragmatic outcome differences between men and women that use gender in the self-subjective way that you're claiming that we should. Show me one study.
It's not proof of anything that I can't come up with something for your narrow conditions. Now, I'm not done responding yet, and unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to read the spot I lost because I totally lost it. I'm going to try reading this. Response is possible to categorize. I'll try to come back with that. But I think that it's interesting that you're trying to do this. You have no studies saying, because I clearly do. When you have no necessary condition for what a man or woman is that is purely biological, I have one. Asking somebody, if somebody tells you that, like, I identify this way, that's a very good condition for somebody committing to that, because someone who's committed to that gender and performing that gender over their lives will definitely and confidently say what they are. So is there any biological factor that you could think of that is a necessary condition for man or woman?
Yes, the necessary condition for how we use the term man and woman is man is a biological adult male and woman is a biological adult female.
So
if you're a biological male and you say I'm a woman, you are wrong.
So, and by that you mean gametes, the production of gametes.
Sure, we could say gametes, though I will admit that sometimes on the fringes, there can be exceptions to the rule. Some people might look at it purely as genitals. So having a penis, doesn't matter, exceptions don't prove. We still, for example, any sort of categorization is going to have exceptions. For example, we could say humans are beings that have 2 arms, 2 legs, and 23 chromosomes, right? And yet you could find humans that through mutations and other such things don't have that. That doesn't change the fact that the descriptor that has utility and the way language works is humans are beings with 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, and 23 chromosomes. The exception doesn't prove that that's the rule. It's a disorder. It's an illness. And therefore, by definition, it doesn't disprove the actual definition. It just proves that everything is able to have exceptions to the rule, particularly if we describe them as things that are outside of sort of the norm of what those things are.
So when you say that there are exceptions to the rule, but then you also say that it's a mental illness, you kind of make it seem like it's not naturally occurring. I would argue it is actually. In fact, we see this not just in humans, but that the bimodal distribution of sex characteristics, and I'm not even talking about gender yet, the bimodal distribution of sex characteristics inherently, statistically account for the possibility of some differences in sexual development.
Of course,
no
one would disagree with that. Let me ask a question to see if I can understand, sort of get to more of what you're talking about. I'm trying to steel man your position here. So you're saying that there is some connection to sort of sexual reproduction with the concept of gender. Can you explain what that is just briefly?
Yeah, so these things are interconnected. Really, the interconnection that makes them observable would be like a historical connection where, like, back in agrarian times, the way we divided labor between men working in the fields and women working in the home did make a lot of sense. But we have lost a need for those categories, especially today. And what that's kind of shown us is that there's, and sorry if I'm losing track, I'm also trying to find something, that there's more of a overlap than difference between these groups, which is actually why it makes sense that gender itself is also a spectrum.
Okay, can you define, I promise I'm going somewhere with this. Can you define the term transgender?
People who are transgender are people who are born or exist, because born is still debatable, but exist with a gender identity that does not conform with their genitalia.
Okay, so for example, this would be someone who is born as a biological male, but then as they get older, their identity is, I'm not a biological male. I am the opposite of that.
No, well, no. And in fact, most trans people are aware of acknowledging their reproductive capability. I can't say all because I don't know them all, but most are. I've never met one who hasn't, in fact. And that's because, like, if you're a trans man, you got to realize that you can get pregnant. Like, that's sexual health. And so, you'll probably meet most leftist debaters who will point out trans men can get pregnant, trans women cannot. And that's acknowledging the biological reality right there.
So just to be clear, a trans man, by the way, I'm not saying this to be rude. I always screw this up. A trans man is a biological female that identifies as a man. Is that correct?
Female to male is the best way to think about it. And the only reason we call it that is that's because that is a colloquial usage. It's not a scientific usage.
So there's utility in understanding that there was a biological reality to your sex, but there is an incongruence and you represent or self-identify as sort of the other sex. Fair?
With the same gender that the other sex does, yeah.
And so that's
because again, these are schemas.
Sure.
And
so
schemas are representations of the mind. They're not like physically grounded.
That's the definition. Can you tell me how many genders there are?
Not off my hand. I heard 22.
22 genders.
The ultimate question. There's either 2 or infinity. That's the war. There's either 2 or infinity. Because if you if you think that there's more than 2, well, I guess you could be a gender abolitionist and think there should be 0. So, whatever. We'll throw a problem to the abolitionists. 0, 2, or infinity, right? So, 2 is the heteronormative standard, right? And if you're going to go against that, well, then what's the alternative? Is it 3? Is it 67? Is it 9 million, or is it infinity? It has to be an infinity. I wish people who were on this side of the argument would just say infinity and stop fucking, just fucking around with the answer. Just say infinity. It's gonna sound ridiculous, but at least you'll just put it to bed instead of constantly opening up your argument to this ridicule.
How can we come to that label? What if someone comes up tomorrow and says, actually, I identify as something different? Would you then accept that's a 23rd?
So first of all, I'm gonna have to answer. I'd love to give a linear algebra example with like matrices and stuff, but I don't have Paint up in the right way and to screen share it. But the basic way of putting it is that since this is a spectrum, first of all, it's not binary, And so it's possible to be both or neither. And since there's even some interplay between and extrinsic categories from just that narrow definition I just gave, you get a lot of diversity there. It's essentially saying that, like, another way of thinking about it, actually, here, let me try to put this in a way that it's more conversational. We lose the need for these things once the actual, like, biological origin of these things start to disappear and we evolve and grow as a species. So then people can play more with their forms of gender expression and then come up with, like, what that means to them. I'll be honest. 90% of these you won't encounter in the wild.
Okay, well, that's sort of irrelevant when your argument is the exception proves that the rule can't exist, because there's people that it's sort of a bimodal sort of, so there are people that are intersex, therefore we can't say that biological men are blah, blah, blah. So saying that 90% chance you won't encounter, it's irrelevant. Can you name me just 2 or 3 of the other genders other than sort of man, woman?
Sure. So gender non-conforming, bigender, there is an intersex gender where people actually just say I'm intersex and I'm okay with that.
I'm Zer. What's that called? What's my gender if I'm Zer?
That's a set of pronouns.
Okay, but what gender would that represent?
That's used to differentiate themselves from.
I'm Zer. Oh man, you could just cover all bases. Say male, female, non-binary, female to male, male to non-binary, male to female, male to non-binary, non-binary to female, and non-binary to male. The whole spectrum in 9. There you go. Yeah, that's pretty comprehensive. I think you covered it, Mida.
Traditional uses of gender.
Okay, so given that, whatever that defined term would be, someone who identifies as the gender that differentiates themselves from traditional concepts of gender. You've already said that gender is intrinsically tied at some level to sex. So
not intrinsically, it's interconnected.
It's interconnected. So what's the So given that, no doubt at least one of those genders will have to do with something that's not just both genders, non-genders, not identifying as gender. So those genders that are outside the scope of that, either agreeing with the predefined genders that we already have based on biological reality or existing intentionally, definitionally outside of that scope, those that are identifying as a third gender or any sort of gender that's outside of being defined by those first 2 genders, what's the biological connection to sex for them? So for example, a Zer person, what are they transgendering from and to? Right? Because if you, as a transgender person or someone that was a biological male who doesn't identify to that, and there is some sort of interconnectedness to sex on the term gender, so now you're connecting to female, what is the sex that there's interconnection to a Zer?
So as I've pointed out, these definitions often stem from, like, traditional interconnections that we don't even really see a need for anymore. And so when I say that these are non-traditional kind of identities, what I'm saying is, like, these people are creating an identity that's completely independent of their sex rather than trying to uphold, like, traditional binary sex categories.
So then you would say that sometimes gender has an interconnection to sex. For example, a female to male transition has an interconnection nature to sex by definition because they don't express themselves in the same, identify biologically as male, therefore they're female. Yet other genders are the complete opposite of that in that there is 0 connection to sex whatsoever.
Well, it might help to be specific because it's like the ways that it connects is specifically in the gender roles. Someone's someone's internal gender identity, that being subjective as it is, can happen either dependently or independently of those traditional sex interconnected roles. So again, gender can still happen independently of its connections to sex.
See, already we could see that not only is the definition that you're giving self-referential and subjective, which destroys all utility, but even the characteristics of which you define it does, and we'll get to that in a second, but even the characteristics of which you define it are malleable even in the incredible opposite direction. There is interconnection to sex. There's no interconnection to sex with others. The other point I want to ask on this point before we get to the self-referential portion of this is, how would it be that someone is transgender? How do you know? And I don't want to make this personal, I promise, but I think that it would be easier to ask, are you transgender? Is that fair? Do you mind answering that question?
Yeah, can I actually respond to some things you said real quick?
Sure, why not? Then we'll get back to this.
So first of all, gender has always been malleable, and the definition has been debated for a while. thus showing that there was never really set in stone to begin with. I think you're also confusing potentiality and actuality. So would you consider gender, or let's start with sex. Would you consider sex to be a potentiality or an actuality? Just someone's sex, not actually reproducing.
I think it's actual.
And gender would be an actuality or a potentiality.
Yes, it is a grammatical category in the way that we talk that has to do with the biological reality of being male or female.
So you think that's an actuality as well?
Yes.
So how come people aren't born as man or woman?
Because the definition of man, which is a quote gender category, is adult male.
Right. So when someone comes into this world, there would have to be a formal cause that makes it an actuality. Otherwise, it's a potentiality.
Well, but
There's
the
some other
definition
cause to it.
It's an absurd distinction, right? It's trying to use sort of semantics.
No, it's not.
It is because right.
This is the distinction that led to. This is the distinction that led to the Catholic Church admitting in trans. What is it again? The thing with the body of Christ, where they're like transfiguration, transcendentalism. I forget. But like basically, this is such a powerful argument because here's the thing, right? If the categories that you're creating for sex don't actually tell us about gender, then they can't actually move it. And using those categories as a study for humanity as a whole bastardizes the whole point of studying humanities to begin with, which is to understand us, understand us more, not less.
This is so absurd because all I'm saying is that the concept of gender is just the way that grammatically we categorize based on biological reality or sex. Within that, we could have definitions of specific terms that we use in that grammatical category that could be hyper-specific to types of male and types of female. For example, if I say an elderly man, you can't say, oh, well, elderly man's sort of a bad definition because you can't be born an elderly man. Therefore, we can't consider that an actual definition. That's absurd because the definition includes the part about age. The same would be true of man and woman. It is adult male or adult female. You are born a boy, which is a non-adult male, or a girl, which is a non-adult female. That's so the idea that just because you're not born a man, which by definition, man has a portion of it that has to do with age, is absurd to say that it's not actualized.
So I think you don't kind of understand the point that you're making about causes. You're kind of making a cause from form, like this actually kind of exists in some sort of platonic hyperspace, rather than it being something that actually makes sense. Gender is not something that we're born with. Just having a certain sex doesn't automatically lead to gender being expressed one way or another. What we see is that humans create that, is that cultures create that, and that this varies incredibly across these things. And the reason for that is that even though sex, the statistics of sex are very much the same, when humans make stuff up, then definitions automatically kind of become circular because it's a man-made thing, and B, it becomes malleable because you can have different populations that come up with different definitions of things. And that malleability is actually proof to my point that there is no such thing as real objective gender. There is only gender as we perceive it. Now, going back to the causes thing, Aristotle.
First off, please, let me go before you go to
I let you ramble
please,
so many
before
times
you go
in
on
a
to
row.
another point. You do.
Here's what
I've been so patient.
Hold on. Here's what I'll say, Furby. Here's what I'll say, because you did say I do want to be corrected if I misrepresented something that you
that's
said.
true.
And you offered that, so I will allow it only
you for
because you
reminding me.
offered that. Okay.
So
thank you.
just to be clear, this was an interjection on the question I asked you about being trans, and we went down a path that you wanted, right? So just to be clear, that's how we ended in this spot. You're sort of begging the question there with your response. The question, I'm fundamentally disagreeing with your definition of gender, and you say, well, Rob, your definition can't be correct, and then you proceed to say the reason it can't be correct is because your definition is correct, but that's circular. No, I don't believe that you have to self-identify, and that's what gender means. I believe that gender is a grammatical categorization of biological realities of sex. And so, yes, you can be born a gender. You fundamentally are arguing that no, actually, it has to do with the way you identify, and therefore you won't know how you identify when you're an infant. I disagree with that, and I think I'm doing a tremendous job arguing why not only is it the reality that anytime this term's used with utility, we're talking about it in biological sex and being a categorical expression of that, but the only time that it's not used in that way are by people that are trying trying to have cultural inroads through sort of this queer theory in order to subvert language to interchange the words to achieve political and cultural outcomes.
Well, I can think of other things like people who actually have trans kids. I just want to point out, like, the definitions I'm giving are actually observable. So the differences in gender across culture, I can post you studies about this. This comes down to the local level, these changes. And like I said,
so it's observable. Is Sarah a man or a woman?
Sarah, let me ask Sarah something for a second. Before you do, Sarah, you're a country girl, right?
I'm both.
Oh,
I've been
okay.
in both, yeah.
Do you see a difference in how men in the country versus men in the city act?
I mean, you could go with accents and things that, like, hobbies are differing for the most part.
Are men in the city more likely to be feminine? It's like maybe a better way of putting that question. Sorry to narrow it.
No, not the ones I know.
Okay. I've met a lot of people who disagree, but sorry, I just thought maybe you would observe that too. And Rob was asking you, or were you asking me if she's a woman, or you were asking her?
No, I'm asking you. You said it's observable. So am I a man or a woman? Is Sarah a man
I think I understand what they were trying to get at with that, but they asked it in such a weird fucking way.
or woman? Or are we some other third gender?
That's not what I said was observable,
Then
Rob.
what's observable?
What I said was observable is how we handle gender, how we define gender.
Right. You're right. How anybody defines anything is observable. Can you think of one term that the way someone identifies isn't it observable of how they identify? Can you think of one term that doesn't fit that categorization?
In terms of internal, not offhand, because
Right.
I
So
want to
then
make a
you
different
basically,
argument anyways.
so your argument here is basically, well, because it's observable how I define gender, therefore that gives it some form of legitimacy. Absurd. Every term fits that category.
Well, you're also sort of saying that just because things have some overlap, that we should also consider them to be the same thing. So, like, if you want to get to absurdity, like, neither of us are free of that guilt, and so that's a very poor argument. What I will say is that I think that if you went out into the world, if you took, like, maybe several gender studies courses, talk to some actual gender studies professors, maybe even if you got the chance, talk to Judith Butler, that would be amazing.
Yeah, that
On
would be
these things, what
amazing.
you
Wow.
hear is that there is no universal definition of gender. There is no definition that if we wipe all of our brains clean, that, you know, tomorrow everyone's going to wake up, all the women are going to start wearing makeup on their own, all the men are going to start wearing loose fitting jeans and stuff like that. You know, some of these things are convenience, but when you think about it, like, there's nothing about having a penis that stops you from wearing a dress. There's some inconveniences, but there's literally, like, there's not, it's not like the penis says, warning, cannot be worn with a dress without catastrophic consequences.
Okay,
Can I
but
ask
it's
a
sort of
clarifying question to that? Don't we call that like drag? If a man wears a dress, it's not transgender, right? I just want to make sure.
If they still identify as a man.
So if I may, right, I think that it's glib in how you're sort of approaching this and saying, well, it can be benign. Just because a man wears a dress doesn't mean that you have to do X, Y, Z. Yes, but there's clearly subversion when it comes to controlling language. And even Judith Butler and company would admit that. He who controls the language will be able to subvert in many ways. Let me tell you an example. You asked me to take gender studies courses. Not only have I debated some of the premier gender studies debaters that occurred in the country back when I used to debate many moons ago, but I took a lot of these courses to try to get some understanding of it. So let me tell you one of the courses I took. One day, an issue came up that talked about the difference. It said there are studies. The reason that we see a disparity on women getting custody of children in divorces more than men is because there are many studies that talk about raising children in a feminine household is better than raising them in a masculine household. So I raised my hand and said, can you define the traits of what this study means when it says feminine and masculine? She says, yes, feminine is caring, nurturing, providing support, feeding on time, those sorts of things. Masculine would be beating your child, starving them. And I was like, so in other words, the study says raising kids good is good and raising them bad is bad. It just affixes the terms masculine and feminine. And she argued with me. And I said, are you saying that biological males are less likely to be better caretakers than biological females? She says, perish the thought. I wouldn't say that. And then immediately goes back to explaining why biological men should be less likely to get custody of children. What happened was a subversion of the language by interchanging what we mean by man and woman, and sometimes saying that it's just a self-identification category, and then when it fits you to say, actually, no, when we're talking about sort of disparities that prioritize the victimhood group, in this case, women, we'll actually talk about the sexual differences and say there's a sexual connotation. That's what I'm talking about, of subverting language and sorting to create activism, which ended up leading to a lot of the outcomes. We could talk about these outcomes of sort of what I see as sort of perverse nature and degeneracy that's occurred because of things like this idea of transgenderism. But I want to get back to the question that I asked you, because
I have a bunch of stuff to
I'm sure you do, but I would like to get back to the
conversation,
question. I just want to ask you, do you identify as transgender? Because I have a point that I would like to ask you about this.
Okay, I will answer that at the end of what I say, so that way you can. So subversion can happen for a reason, particularly when things are wrong and people are able to point out that there is something like an injustice or even a categorical error, which we agree are harmful, which is why I'm arguing to avoid them. And yes, I am transgender.
Okay, how do you know you're transgender?
Because I feel like I'm living a lie, like a literal lie, by pretending to be a man.
Okay, but how do you know you're not just a woman as opposed to a transgender woman?
What do you mean, just a woman?
Like, why do you affix the descriptive term transgender? Why aren't you just a woman?
Oh, no, transgender woman and cisgender woman are both women.
Okay, but my question is, why are you not a cisgender woman? Why are you transgender woman?
Well, because I'm not a woman on a reproductive level.
Oh, so woman, why? So explain to me the connection again between the reproductive level of woman and how that goes with the term that you define as gender, which is woman.
So when someone is a cisgendered woman, their reproductive function matches their identity. When someone is a transgender woman, their reproduction function can be different than their gender identity.
But can you define what a woman is for me? To you, I know that it's the characteristics of a woman. So can you tell me what those characteristics are that make you want to call yourself a woman?
So depending on what culture you're in, women can
your culture, you specifically, I mean, that's what I'm asking you.
Oh, my culture.
Yes.
I mean, no, that's a little kind of hard because, like I said, it can even vary locally. But
you're you, so you know how you.
I thought you wanted first of all, like, okay, so women here present as very feminine. They often wear a lot of makeup. They
define feminine.
Define feminine.
Yes, you're defining woman as someone who acts feminine. My understanding is feminine by definition.
Can you define red for me?
Let me finish.
Well, let's run the line of logic.
Yeah.
Let Rob run the line of logic, and then Mel, if you want to return one as well, we'll do that.
Without
I have to
about
return it on him because it's fundamentally impossible for him to define red the same way it's fundamentally impossible for me to define qualia like feminist, like.
I think I would find it to be productive if we run through either the yes or no or how you define something, because we have been laying in semantics pretty hard tonight, I think, and I'd like it to at least establish kind of the foundation of where you're going with the conversation.
My only contention with that is I've already asked Rob what the necessary conditions for a woman is, and he still hasn't given me any that actually work. It's a qualia. It actually has no objective definition. I don't think it means much. From an artistic standpoint, sure. No, that's not my first definition. That's not my first definition. This definition varies heavily based on what a cultural schema for women is, right? So first you have to know that information before you can actually define what women is in any given place. But then the definition would be someone who follows that schema accordingly so they can fit in with the group they feel they belong to.
Okay, but you're making a broad categorization. You're like, well, it could be different place to place.
Women is a broad categorization,
By the way,
Rob.
can I, real quick, it's just a technical issue. You guys can hear me all right? Can my audience hear me? The question, I think I accidentally muted my mic on my, so I'm just going to repeat this
We
real
heard you.
quick. My audience didn't.
You're okay on ours. Your chat saying it's fixed. You're
Okay,
good.
so the question that I asked you was, I think that feminine, if it's true that feminine is just the characteristics of women, and I ask you to define how you subjectively define woman, and you say feminine, you've basically just defined, I define women as people with the characteristics of women. And then your answer about this schema thing, yes, you might be right in a broad categorizational, but when your definition is the subjective belief of an individual, and you're like, yes, but each culture, each woman within that category could subjectively believe woman is something different. I'm erasing all of that by asking you yourself, who identifies as a woman, who admits that the definition of woman has to do with exhibiting the characteristics that we traditionally think that a woman would. How do you define woman? What are the characteristics that you think are women? Not some woman in Swahili, not some woman in France, you yourself. So it's not sufficient to say, well, actually, women in different areas can identify it differently. I'm asking you, how do you know you're a woman if your definition of woman is exhibiting the characteristics of what we commonly assume as women? I'm asking you, well, what are those characteristics for you, not hypothetically for other people?
Yeah, so I've grown up in this world. And you asked for me, so I'm giving you a very personal answer. Sure. I grew up in this world wanting to be, and this is quote, like her, right? And so I would see what women do, and I would think, that feels like the category I should be in. So I want to be like that. That's my intrinsic identity. And so I started orienting my behaviors and stuff up to a point, a very particular point in my life, that would have been deemed more feminine, because I felt like women were the group I belonged to and not men. I also didn't really question it prior to that point. So there wasn't like, I'm doing this to rebel or something like that. It was literally just like, I don't necessarily feel like a boy. And since I'm not being pushed heavily into one category or another, I don't feel like a girl either. I'm just being myself kind of.
You understand how that definition, if I'm legitimate, and by the way.
Well, you asked me about my personal gender history.
Right.
That's inherently not a definition.
Listen, but when you say that the definition of woman, it has to do with the characteristics of women, and you say, and I am a woman, and I ask schema. You, and I, like, whatever, and your schema of women is, I ask, what's that schema that you have? And you're like, I just always identified as her. That's not definitional to any of us. I'm telling you, your answer here is proof why you're incorrect.
I didn't realize you were asking me what my specific schema was.
Let me finish, right? Your answer here is proof how your definition of this is so useless.
I think you need to ask your questions better, buddy.
Please, let me finish my point,
like,
please.
Hold on.
You're complaining about how I answered the question, but you didn't answer the question right to begin with.
He's not. I see what he's saying. He's basically saying like what you're saying is, well, I represent myself this way, X, Y, Z. Really doesn't have any definitive answer that we can put into an equation or something.
If I can real quick, give me 10 seconds to explain this. Your definition is useless because right now, everyone listening still has no idea why you identify as a woman. They have no idea, which shows that there is zero utility because everyone's sitting, I'm trying to honestly hear from you. I'm not coming at this from a stance of I want to make fun of you. I'm like, how do you know you're a woman? And you're like, because I identify as her. And now you're like, well, I didn't know you were asking for my individual schema. I could not have made it more clear at least 3 times. I'm not asking about women in Swahili. I'm asking about you.
You didn't say schema. So in terms of my particular schema, I was thinking long hair, wearing makeup, wearing flowery, pretty clothes, being a little quieter, a little bit more demure and stuff like that, being more agreeable, making eye contact more, smiling more, a lot of the things that can be a little bit broader. But here's the thing is I don't consider my own definition to be sufficient. I don't think anybody's individual definition is sufficient for something that is inherently a broad category. And yes, I gave you a definition of a broad category. I still feel kind of unsatisfied because I think you're just doing this all to deflect from having to answer what is a necessary condition for a woman on your end that isn't just biological.
You ready? You ready?
Yeah.
The necessary condition is being an adult biological female.
So what is a female?
A female is someone with large gametes production.
So if someone does not produce large gametes, and this is a condition that females can have, are they no longer a woman?
No, that there is.
Then that's not a necessary condition, Rob.
No, that's not true. Because we could have every definition for any specific
So
term,
it's
particularly
Waglek.
when we're talking about biological life, will always have exceptions. That does not disprove that the definition has utility and is true.
Right.
For example, how many chromosomes do humans?
Is all those H's what I think it means? I think that's what, yeah. Yeah, I'm not gonna mess around with that. I'm not gonna mess around with that. Da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, not messing around. Not messing around with that. See you later, bud.
Humans have.
But then if you can
I
have a
asked you a
definition
question,
that
can
doesn't
you
rely
answer?
on that, that's
I
fine.
asked you a
But if
question,
can
can
have
you
a
answer? How
I
many
know, I'm
chromosomes do
rebutting.
humans
I'm
have?
rebutting now because I'm the one leading the line of questioning now. You can have something that doesn't fit the definition, and all that means is that that's not a necessary condition for it. It's a possible condition, but not a necessary condition. I'm asking you for one thing that there's from women that if it's not a woman, then they're no longer a woman. What is it?
If they're not a biological adult female.
But we've already reduced that down to their haploid.
How many
type.
Now, I went through your line of questioning. You just admitted that it got circular. How many chromosomes do a human have?
Rob, do you concede that there
Why
is
are
no
you incapable
necessary
of
condition
answering
for a
this?
woman? Do
Yeah,
you concede that there's no necessary condition
I
for
will
a woman?
I will repeat my answer for you one more time, and then I would
see
appreciate.
the point coming. I see the point coming. I think it would be better to answer. It is a simple question. Go
Okay,
ahead.
ask it again.
How many chromosomes does a human have?
23.
But wait, there can't be humans without 23 chromosomes?
No, because no, there can actually because they just wouldn't
So
be
then-
reproductively
so
compatible.
then you
But we
just-
still might call them. Wait, Rob, will we still call them man or woman?
It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant to the question. I'm controlling the line of questioning now, so I'd appreciate if you answer. So given that, if now you're changing your definition, then can you give me a necessary condition of how many chromosomes a human has?
No, sorry, that's not a change in definition.
Sure it is.
That's-
You at first said they have 23, and then you
because we
said, please, let me
because
finish.
that-
Please,
we
let me
created
finish.
a new term
Please,
for that different.
please,
No, I'm not done.
please.
I'm not done. I'm not done.
Hold on. I see where the point's going, and I want to see it finish. And then, Rob, after you finish through that little walkthrough,
Sure.
then we're going to turn it over to Mel, okay?
That's fair. When I asked you, you gave a definitive answer, 23 chromosomes. When I said, but what about a human that doesn't have 23? You said, you changed, and you said, oh, yes, there can be humans without 23. The point that I'm trying to make is quite simply, yes, there can be abnormalities, but that doesn't prove that the realities of what the norm for human biology is, just like the norm for any biology of any living being, can't be discussed because there could be abnormalities that occur through within that. And my definition is always going to have far more necessary conditions because your definition is always going to be subjective. For example,
None of those necessary conditions seem sufficient.
that's
Interesting.
okay. So you give me the next. Then again, you would understand that for all sorts of reasons, it would be important to be able to scientifically describe the makeup of a human. Correct?
I don't think we can describe it with a high degree of precision.
But nonetheless, it would be important to define terms to actually attempt to know
Yes.
as much as about. Okay, so given
In-
that,
in
can you give me the necessary condition for chromosomes for a human being?
Necessary condition for chromosomes
Correct.
for a human being.
Yes. To say
Not
this.
offhand, actually, because I'm not that familiar with the human genome in particular.
So you
I
can,
wanted
and
to
I'll
point-
finish. I promise this is the last word on it, and then you can control the questioning. So you can see that the stylistic way that you're arguing and saying that all language is malleable and there's always exceptions to the rule, therefore we can't say that there's
I
ever
didn't say that.
That's the logical implication of what you're saying. Therefore, we can't say that there are necessary conditions for anything. It makes language a total social construct, and it defeats the utility of language.
No, it's not all language. So first of all,
Give me
this
an
is for
example of any
gender in
necessary
specific.
condition of human.
This is for gender in specific. Rob, the thing that we did once we realized that not all human chromosomes were 46 XX or XY was we created up a new term, right? We created up something called karyotypes, and the word karyotypes is kind of like the word gender, in that there is no such thing as a mandatory set of karyotypes. Just because karyotypes as an idea and the concept exists doesn't mean that the bimodal distribution of our chromosomes aren't 46 XX or XY. We still need terminology that can factor in these differences. Otherwise, we're just ignoring this and having imprecise language. So again, I'm asking you to either concede or find me a necessary condition that without it, we no longer have a man or a woman.
You proved my point. Thank you so much. Yes, what we did was we created new terms to define the abnormality, which is exactly what we should do with the concept of gender, which in a historical connotation meant the grammatical category of male
Rob,
and female.
do you have a
Please,
karyotype?
let me finish. So given that, we should have created new terms like
No, that's not what we did with karyotypes, though. You're just wrong. Rob,
please.
why do you want to be wrong about this?
Hold on.
I will give you, Mel, I will cede the floor and you can tell me how I'm incorrect about this. Go ahead.
Mel.
I thought you meant after you finish. Sure. Even if you have a normal karyotype, you still consider to have a karyotype. This isn't something that's
Define
only
karyotype.
used. Karyotypes are the count of chromosomes that can exist for a given group. So for humans, we don't just have 46XX or 46XY. You can have 45 or 47, or you can have 46XXX or 46XXY. There's many different combinations possible because nothing in nature is absolute, or almost nothing in nature is absolute.
And so we created a new term to identify the fact that there could be significant abnormalities, and so nothing is absolute. And so there could be a broad range. In fact, even if there's never been an experience identified of a human being having something like 17 chromosomes, hypothetically it's possible. So we defined this term, which I've never heard of before, but we created it, that says, well, wait a minute, there could always be exceptions to the rules, so we need to have a term that describes that. We created a new,
its utility,
please,
at
let me
least,
finish.
right?
We created a new term, the same way that we should have done, such as gender dysmorphic or people with mental illnesses that don't identify correctly with the biological reality that they exhibit. Yes, we should have created new terms instead of subverting language, and you've already conceded that
It's not
historically
subverting
the
language.
way that this has been used, again, you can't provide one study that talked about the pragmatic difference in outcomes between men and women, not one ever that you're able to cite.
I can give you one for
that is-
karyotyping, actually. Karyotyping
What does it
is a
have to
great
do with the question that I just asked?
that when we came up with a new word, there was a utility for it, which is the only time we ever make these words. So again, with karyotyping, actually being able to do fertility studies on people, that was an important thing about understanding why some people are infertile. Going back to the trans stuff, we're not trying to redefine sex. Sex is the objective category. Sex is the thing that actually happens. It's a real thing. Gender is something that occurs in the mind. It is a representative schema and enacted behaviors. You are your sex. You can only do gender.
That's untrue. Again, you're saying that I'm right because I'm right, and therefore I'm right.
No, I'm
It's
not. I'm telling you the difference
I'm
between
telling
these
you, I'm
things.
telling you that I disagree, as have humans throughout most of human history, and in all ways that there is utility.
And
when
those
they
people
use their,
were wrong
please,
for a
let me
long
finish.
period of time.
Please.
No, Rob, that came before we had any scientific knowledge on things.
Okay, so explain
Seriously.
that it's absurd because it's just a change in definition of a term that's already existed. You just admitted when it came to chromosomal differences, we created new terms to be more specific. Your argument is that we were forced to change the term gender to now about identity, which it never was previously.
I
until
never argued
basically-
we were forced to.
Yeah, well,
for
we
one
should.
thing.
All right, we should. Which previous to that, it had nothing to do with identity, but we should change. Else we'd be erasing people. But you've already given the solution to your problem. We could create new terms, therefore those people wouldn't be erased. I again show you that I'm
gender is the
obviously
new term.
real quick. I again show you that I'm obviously correct because in any study that you could think of that talks about pragmatic differences in outcomes between men and women, which is how we'll use this term to have like real utility in the real world, such as difference in pay gap between men and women. Every single time that you could think of, it's not discussing how these people self-identify, it's discussing the biological reality of them being adult males or adult females. You can't give one example, which
Yes,
proves
I
that
already
you are
did.
wrong. Yeah, and I just want to say, this proves you are wrong on the descriptive claim of what is, because the majority of people that use this term in all ways that it's utility are using it as a grammatical category of an extension of sex. And we could get to the ought if you want, why it's not only that way, but it ought to be that way.
So again, I can already point to a study that literally talks about why we should do this. So you keep saying like it's not being done, it's not talked about in literature, blah blah blah. It is, and John Money, as much as I hate some of the research he did do that. In fact, John Money used to be just like just an environmentalist and say like, oh, it's all just environmental. Nobody has any like intrinsic inclinations. He later realized like, no, we actually have our own intrinsic inclinations to be a part of a group.
What does the
to
word
look at one group or another and say that's the group I want to be a part of, and the reasons, and we don't have a word for that in particular because there's no reason for that word. The reason that we created the word gender is because when you walk on the street and you decide what pronouns to use and how to interact with somebody along lines of sexual differences, you don't actually look at their genitals. You don't look at any of that stuff. You look at presentation.
We didn't create the word gender to do that. The word gender existed long before it was defined as something as was identity. So no, that's not why we created the word gender.
Do words change over time, Rob?
That's why certain people, for political and cultural reasons, tried to subvert language in doing that. But I get to this. If we're talking about erasure of people, let's go back to this example. I identify as tall. Correct or incorrect? Am I tall?
No, that is a measurable thing.
How is it measurable? What's the definition of tall?
With a ruler.
Okay, so how many inches do I have to be tall?
Oh, that's subjective.
Okay, so then if I say I'm tall because the definition is subjective, then you have to agree no matter how many inches I am, I'm tall, correct?
I mean, I can't disagree with your internal identity. I can disagree with you along other lines, like inductive arguments. Like I've seen a lot of people who are taller than you, so I wouldn't personally categorize you.
Right, and your biological reality is also objectively measurable, and you can think whatever you want in your own mind, and I can't control what you think of yourself in your own mind. You could be schizophrenic and hear voices in your head, and I have people in my life that I love. I work with people with disabilities who have issues like that, and I don't treat them like shit because they have voices in their head. They're welcome to think that the voices in their head are real. But you know what I don't believe? That those voices are real. Just like because it's measurable, we could determine if someone's tall or not, but they themselves could choose to characterize themselves as tall, even though everyone else in the world might say, no, you are objectively not tall. You're only 2'6". I can't control what individuals think, but I can control what the objective reality outside the scope of that is and how we use terms to be descriptive so we have a collective understanding of them. So you're welcome to think that you're a woman, but you're not.
Okay, so that was a really clever way of going out of our debate of the actual topic, is gender different from sex, which I've actually mostly heard concessions from you on, into the trans stuff. Well, I'll address that in my conclusions and you can respond accordingly. Just to point out, like, just because language recategorizes and changes over time, that doesn't always make it a subversion. When people are subverting norms, it's because they have a critique of those norms, and you have to actually identify if the critique is valid or not. I've been arguing this whole time, the critique is valid, not only has merit, but utility. But we can get into other stuff so that way we stop circling the drain.
No, I think this is good. Can you, like, real quick, maybe it would help each other, the moderator and the audience. Can you tell me, just in a nutshell, like a minute or two, what is the utility of gender being about self-identification? And then if you don't mind, I'll respond at what the utility is in my sense, and then we could go back and forth again, 2 minutes apiece, what the damage is for how the other person defines it.
Right. So the utility is that the best measure we have of somebody's own internal schema is actually to ask them. We have no better measurement. And so when we actually get this information from people, we might be able to make mostly psychological or sociological predictions about their behavior, the groups they might want to be a part of, and their gender history as well.
Okay. I think that the utility of defining gender in the way that it always was before this radical change was that it allows a grammatical categorization and words to be used that are descriptive of biological sex, and that's important for the utility in language, and it means that there is a universal understanding with, granted, some things at the fringes that could be different. Like, for example, when I say cat, you might think of an image in your head that's slightly different than mine. I think of a big orange cat, you think of a big black cat because we've each had cats or something like that. But we ultimately have an understanding. And all terms have utility based on each other being able to understand that terms. Language and definitions become meaningless if the terms are subjective. And so the downside of your claim is, or the way that you define gender is, because the term itself becomes self-referential, even the definition you give is, basically, at the end of the day, man means people the way they think act like men. It loses all utility because you may think men act a certain way and I may think they act different. So therefore, when you give the descriptive term, I am a man, that is a man, that is a woman, the word loses meaning because I say that could literally mean anything. If you were born in Africa, you will think that a man presents and has characteristics different than someone who was born in Los Angeles. And so when you say that is a man, I literally have no clue what that would mean. Once the word loses utility...
Wait, you said 2 minutes, right?
Did I go over 2 minutes? That's fine.
I might have started.
I may have gone over 2
late,
minutes. That's fine. Go ahead.
So, like, I agree with you. We need language to be functional. The difference is that, like, this is not something that is intrinsically real. We already have a word for biological sex. It's biological sex. For gender, though, what we need is something that identifies that not everybody who has a penis, for example, is going to want he, him pronouns. And understanding the difference between that, aside from like getting really into like the deep neurobiology of it and like the interactome, is to say, well, certain people are born into this world inclined to identify a certain way. And that inclination makes them want to be a part of a certain group. They look at what that group does, and then they emulate that behavior. And thus, gender is an action. It's not something that you are. It is something that you do, and you...
Someone with the characters of a tall person, but not others. Rob backed him in a corner. Shame Rob didn't know how to argue this point. Which is a shame. I, as a progressive, actually argue this more conservative talking points better than conservatives. Okay, yeah. I'm curious to see where he's going to go with this one.
Choose to do based on an inclination. You can also choose not to do it, right? You can subvert your own internal inclinations, but then somebody would change the gender they perform to do. They would no longer perform the same gender as if they didn't subvert it. So again, it all comes back down to that. And I'll just point out, like you said, like everything I'm doing is making things meaningless. I think conflation makes things especially meaningless, on top of the fact that you're actually the one doing a categorical error.
It's not a categorical error, and I'll re-explain what's going on here. The problem with what you're trying to say here is the problem you're trying to solve is easily solved by just creating new terms. Right? So we could create a new term that means someone that has a biological reality but identifies in a different way. I think the utility that would most come from defining those terms have to do with an idea that the word being defined means outside the scope of normal human experience. Like an illness, that would be a more accurate descriptor, so we could create new words that mean that. The problem is, you could redefine the term gender, but there are already words that exist within that scope of what gender is, such as man and woman. And what you've done is completely eliminate the utility of those words. And that's bad because those words, seeing as how they were a grammatical categorization of biological reality, have utility. Now, I already talked about why in the studies, but let's give an example from a hypothetical that maybe you'll understand. Let's play a little role-playing scenario here, if you all don't mind. Sarah, Mel, would you care to join me on this journey? Mel, let's say that you're...
I don't know if I want to role-play with you, Rob.
I assure you, it will be quite painless. Mel, let's say you're walking down the street and you have a...
Can you do this with Sarah?
Yeah, Sarah's going to be included in the example. Right? The reason I'm using you as the aforementioned person is because I'm trying to be more diplomatic about the fact that you're trans and don't want to use you as the other part of this example.
Rob, okay, so first ask yourself, is this going to age well?
Yes. Ready? I think very much.
I'm being playful.
Just to be clear, I don't think that your ideas are aging well as society's rejecting in wholesale sort of complete.
Do I get a prize for playing along?
You do. which is the dignity of participating in such an epic debate. That's the prize you get. So, all right, now let's say you're walking down the street and you have a wallet, a purse, whatever you carry your money in. I don't give a shit, right? And Sarah, that thug that she is, glibly walks by you and grabs your purse, wallet, whatever, with all your money in it. And I happen to be a police officer, and I'm walking by, and you yell, "Officer, officer, someone just stole my purse." And Sarah's running down the street, but there's also like 20 other people in the street. And I say, "Who?" And you're like, "That person there." And you start to describe with blonde hair, maybe, I don't know how tall Sarah is, but let's say 5'8" or whatever, 5'6", whatever she is.
God.
And I say, "That man or woman?" What are you going to say?
Okay, so this is an interesting question. I'll give you that much. So I'll take my time to answer it the best that I can. I think this depends heavily on how you want to identify that person. If that person's abnormally tall, then say they were really tall. If they had blonde hair, then say they had blonde hair. If you're going to say man or woman, I actually think their presentation matters more than what their gametes or hormones or stuff like that is. So you kind of prove my point with that.
I didn't prove
by the way, I didn't get a full chance to respond last time because your whole thing with wanting to
I
roleplay.
promise we can
No, I'll say take your time, Mel. But
I need a full rebuttal
figure
for
it
all
out.
this.
Figure it out.
Please, we could go. I want to stay on this example for a second, but as an officer, I just asked you, like you start to describe blonde, 5'5", blah, blah, blah. And as an officer, I look and I see like 2 people that meet that description. And I have a limited amount of time to track down and get your money back. And I say, that man or that woman? What are you saying?
You use what you think the officer might identify. So if it's a trans woman and they've got a wig and a dress and makeup on, and you don't want to be to the officer like, it looked like a woman, but I think it might have also been a man. You just say that woman, so that way he'll go find the person in the fucking dress.
That's right.
But that's schema. That's again presentation. That's gender presentation. That's not biology. That's not biology.
It has nothing to do with schema.
Rob, is that biology?
Again,
is that biology? Yes or no?
I understand you realize you've disproven your whole argument here, and so now you're getting sort of
I've
frantic and
disproven your
spurging out a
claims.
little. Cut back on the
I've
glibness just a
disproven
bit
your
here.
claims.
No, what you've
right,
proven
all
is
right,
when I'm being a little tongue in cheek. I'm not upset or anything.
I
think this is fun.
know.
But
You guys are fun.
But what I'm saying is, right, when the rubber meets the road and you need utility, the way that you know to define woman is exactly what other people will see as the characteristics of woman. You wouldn't say to the officer there, "Well, officer, wait a second. I can't tell you if it was a man or a woman because I did not get a chance to ask Sarah the mugger if she identifies as male or female." You understand that in that moment where it matters, and this term matters, that the utility in that term is saying the objective appearance and how people interpret what a man and woman is. You're absolutely correct that someone could look like a woman and not actually have the genitalia of a woman. But what this proves is that there is an objective reality. Your subjective view, let me finish, your definition that relies on subjectively what each individual defines as themselves becomes completely irrelevant in every single situation where there is utility that requires the receiver of the communication you're giving to have some sort of understanding of what the term means. It will never have any
I
utility.
Be patient, but I need to be super clear on this. For one thing, like if this were a proof for like a biological woman, we'd see the logical argument. If their biology matters, then we would tell the officer about their gametes or their chromosomes or their genitals or something like that. But we don't. Therefore, it seems like biology doesn't matter. It seems like you're proving my point for me, buddy.
It's not true at all. There is an objective reality. There is.
What do you mean it's not true at all? You just proved my point that we don't recognize those things. We recognize the length of their hair, whether or not they're wearing makeup or wearing a dress.
Right. The categories that we understand comes from the biological people that normally present us those.
Those words, those biological though.
They all have to do with phenotypical expressions of the biological reality. They all.
Gametes don't work. Gametes don't work.
Compare my definition to your definition, which would be that the definition of woman is people that act and present like a woman compared to their own individual definitions. That circular, self-referential definition literally means nothing.
Sometimes definitions can be circular, so that's a fallacy to think that all circular definitions are like that. For example.
Sure.
For example, the color red, you can describe it on technical terms like its physical properties, but I cannot tell you what the color red looks like if you have never seen the color red. It
Yep.
is that simple. I can tell you all the other things that were red, but that doesn't mean I can tell you what red is. Just like the quality of experiencing being a woman, I can't tell you that on a deep down level. I can tell you how I got here. I can't tell you what it's like.
The
That's
concept-
that's a much different thing. And so that's why these definitions become circular. When
That's
you
not true.
demand a definition, then that's what you get. My question for you is, what is a necessary condition that's rooted in biology? Because I've already
Adult, human,
destroyed
female.
gametes,
Adult. This is the 8th time you've asked.
but
Adult,
you can't
human,
describe
female.
in a way that
Let me-
doesn't prove that
Let
there's
me
not a
answer you
necessary
again.
condition.
Adult, human, female. Do you want to
Okay,
ask the
but
question
I've already
again?
proven
Adult,
that
human,
female is not
You got it?
sufficient as a necessary condition.
I disagree. We had this debate. We already talked about this.
Yeah.
You were unable to prove it. Just like with the chromosomal issue, you acknowledge that we still say that humans have a particular amount of chromosomes, and then we created another term to exemplify, yes,
What's up, Globalize?
there could be abnormalities, but
Do we still
haven't
call the people with
skirted.
other chromosomes
We haven't
human?
skirted the ability, the definitional utility of saying that there is a utility, because all language has to have utility that the receiver understands what's being discussed. And so the fact that
I not
please,
only responded
please.
to that directly, I posted something in the side that you can read all you like and try to refute that if you'd like. I think you need a necessary condition on this.
Necessary
because none of
condition,
these
adult,
things-
human, female. What's the
none of these
necessary condition
things-
for women for you? What's the necessary condition for women for you?
That's not a sufficient condition because female
It
can
is
mean
a
a lot of
sufficient.
different things.
It is.
Female can mean a lot of different things, and none of
interrupting.
and
Is this
no
what we're
and
gonna
no
do?
singular thing about female.
I feel like that's become we're going back in circles again, because I do believe we already tapped into all of this earlier. So we can continue it if you guys want to duke it out again. I'm happy to oblige. I
Look,
just
if
wanted
Rob
to
can
bring
admit that he doesn't know what a necessary condition actually is
I
and just can't
understand.
refute me along that,
I understand what a necessary
then
condition
you're unable
is.
to actually argue
That's
for
not
one.
true. What is the necessary condition for chromosomes that a human has? We're literally relitigating the argument that you've already lost. But if you need to relitigate it again, we can. What is the necessary condition for the amount of chromosomes that a human has?
Since we relitigate this, I'll jump to the chase. We still call the people with different chromosomes human, just like we still call the people who don't have those certain conditions female, right? Because there is no such thing as a necessary condition.
That
for
is true. So there can be, for example, well, it's basically true, right? We say that there are abnormalities, but people would still exist within these categorizations. So, for example, we can say that if the biological reality made someone closer to the biological sex of female, even though they might not meet the necessary conditions of what we consider female, which is biological sex, that we would still say that we would categorize them as female because it's closer to that. I could demonstrate this easily if you want. What is the you say necessary condition for woman? How about this? What's the necessary condition for female?
So necessary condition, there is no singular necessary condition. There are a bunch of conditions that together increasingly point to someone being female. Now,
No,
reproductively.
wait.
Now, do you want the answer?
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
let her
Now-
answer.
Now, there's a more narrow reproductive definition that doesn't apply to humans in particular, and that is the production of large and small gametes. But I will point out that even if someone is not able to produce gametes, we still call them women. So that
Do we call them
necessary
female?
condition for female does not go all the way to gender. It does not extrapolate to
Do
gender.
we still call them female? I noticed the clever sleight
Yes,
of hand.
actually.
Oh, so
Yes,
if
we
you,
do.
so it's just to be clear, if the other characteristics that would make up what we consider female exist within a person, but they have some sort of abnormality where they're incapable of producing large gametes, you would say that they're still female.
I'm saying my general point, by the way, is that
That's a
without
simple
a
yes, no.
without a necessary condition, you can't say that there's any biological essentialist argument for gender.
I didn't hear a yes, no, an answer to my question.
That's fine.
Would you like me
I
to
think
repeat
you're
it?
losing track of what my argument is, which is specifically that we need this necessary condition to make any biological essentialist argument.
I
Because
noticed
without
once
it,
more,
you can still have female and woman interchangeably.
Why
without
are you
these
why are you incapable of answering the question? I'll get to the utility of why I'm asking this question. I'll ask again. If someone met all the conditions biologically of what we consider female, with the exception that they had some sort of abnormality where they didn't have the correct gamete production, would we still call them a female?
Yes, because these so-called abnormalities are naturally occurring. Therefore, we don't need to uncategorize them as like some different group, except for when we're making those distinctions. So the same for transgender versus cisgender woman. Sometimes we're just talking about that woman over there, and it doesn't really matter if they're trans or not. But if I were talking about a trans issue, like trans rights, and how that differs from the rights of other women, like cisgender women, then we might want to be able to make those distinctions every time I say woman, right?
You just defeated your own argument because
did
by
not.
proving that there are no quote necessary conditions that would be applicable to all definitions of female, and yet we could still look at biological reality in determining who's a female, even if there are abnormalities. Then when we go over to the term woman, when I say as an adult human female, you say you can't use that because you can't give a necessary condition. Yet you would defeat your own argument based on your argumentation. Then we could never call anyone a female because we don't have an exact definition with complete necessary conditions. Once you say that we can make exceptions for the term female, and my definition of woman includes adult human or is adult human female, you don't get to say that that definition can't apply because it falls victim to the very things that you're saying that are acceptable with the term female. You've defeated your own
women
argument.
were something like comparable to height, for example, that we could measure, there would be necessary conditions within the category, within the definition of woman, that we could also measure.
Like what?
When this conflicts with how society uses things, then when you're doing something more than just biology or genetics, or for example, sociology, you need something that actually talks about the way we interact. You can't just say, oh, well, certain people have XX, certain people have XY, therefore we can assume everything based off of that. You can't make any further predictions off of something when none of these things are necessary conditions to begin with.
So I just want to say a clever sleight of hand there, and this is what I was talking about, of people that try to redefine the term gender to meet self-identification, that it has to do with subversion of language, and you can interchange it as you see fit. Your criticism of me, please, let me finish.
We're trying to be more precise.
Your criticism of me using the term woman to mean the grammatical category of adult human female, right? Like, or gender is the grammatical category of the expression of sex. Your criticism specifically looking at the term man or woman is, but there are physical characteristics that you will not be able to have necessary conditions every time because there's abnormalities. But you agree that the term female should mean what we've accepted female to.
You want to just share our pronouns real quick? My pronouns are root beer self. That's mine. You ever seen that? No. Was it Tumblr? Yeah. There it is. Boom. There's mine right there. This is the actual Tumblr neo pronoun list. And we went through this, wow, I don't know, a while back, maybe like a year or two ago. And I saw root beer self and I was like, man, that is the one, dude. Root beer self. That is mine. This is a ridiculous list though. This is on Tumblr. This is unironic. Reese, peace, Reese's, pieces, peace self. Rain, cloud, rain cloud, rain clouds, rain cloud self. Poppy, seed, poppies, seed, poppy seed self. I mean, this is like a literal unironic Tumblr list. And it just keeps going and going and going. It's amazing. Pronouns are him, or trans male, presenting lesbian that prefers to be referred to as a male. There you go. There you go. That's a nice combo. That's a nice combo globalized. Showed I show speed, 30k to visit here. Like that is the yearly wage to teachers. Hate my country. Waste of tax money. Do you listen to this brain rot for hours, my dude? This trans stuff is brutal. Well, the thing is, I started this debate not because I fucking wanted to, litigate trans discourse for the 20 millionth time, but I just wanted to see who this Fox person was. I was curious because they had like a Fox avatar, and I figured they might be like a furry or a zoophile or something. So my my interest peaked when I thought that this person might be a fucking sicko or something. And then it ended up just being like a fucking, another gender debate. But either way, I'm only listening to this. I'm working right now, and I will be working nights for the next few weeks. So if you see me streaming and I'm not like really engaged with the stream, it's because I'm working. So fucking good to sniper in Cyberpunk. The blood and the gore is so brutal. I haven't sniped yet. I have two handguns. I have two submachine guns. I have an assault rifle, a shotgun, and like some melee stuff, like a machete. So I haven't gotten the sniper yet. But I'm looking forward to it. And I'm probably going to gear my perks towards whatever, sniper stuff is out there. I love sniping. Sniping's the best. Get behind calling someone by their preferred pronouns or accepting their identities, but it just gets more and more crazy. I'm fine with he, she, and they. My policy has always been I'm fine with he, she, and they. I'm especially fine with they on the internet because I don't feel like hunting down all of your fucking genders and remembering them. So, normally if it's an anonymous person in my chat who I've never met, I'm just going to refer to them as they. If I've met them before, I talk to them on Discord or something, then I'll just either know what their pronouns are or assume what their pronouns are and probably get it right. But he, she, they is my limit. I won't do Zir and fucking Fair and demon self. I won't do any of that shit. I refuse to. I'm just not going to talk to that person. They operate in a completely different fucking framework than I do. Than most people do. As long as you forget them immediately after you tell me. Yeah, there you go. All right. Whatever. This fucking Fox person is not doing it for me, so. How about some Joven? Let's get some Joven. When's the last time you heard some Joven? Some good faith Joven Bradley. Let's do that. This is also Midas' favorite person, too.
Hello, are you here to debate?
Hello. Hey, good afternoon. Yeah. What's going on, brother? How you doing today?
Chillin'. Can I get your name, age, and pronouns, please?
Yes, sir. Anthony, 24, and he, him.
Okay, Anthony, what topic do you disagree with on the board?
I didn't check the board. I was listening in, just scrolling through YouTube, and I heard you
Fox
say
is better?
something
Nah.
before that I wanted to go into further detail.
Now I was done with the Fox. I thought he was going to be like some weirdo zoophile or something like that. I thought somebody was going to call into the stream and was like, hey, haven't you seen this guy's Twitter account? He's out there fucking, banging horses and shit. I thought it was going to be some weirdo. Rob DeJoven? Yeah, exactly.
Go on.
Good faith Joven Bradley.
Okay.
It seems to be that a part of that constitutional right argument is how citizenship is defined and what persons versus citizens it's being affected onto. Use the example, or maybe the guy that you were talking to used the example. How'd it go? It was somebody said something about a non-citizen coming in to rile Americans, and your caveat to that was, don't Americans do that? And I'm not really a super political guy. I'm a political science student, so I'm in it. Just thinking of the Trump and just seeing how the MAGA party has really conflated that citizenship versus a person in America and the rights that you get. Trump versus Hawaii, the Supreme Court, this is maybe 2020 or something like that, they upheld that travel ban targeting certain countries, which has further affirmed that constitutional and Supreme Court adhered decision that non-citizens outside the U.S. don't have the same constitutional protections, and that clarified that was towards like immigratory matters. I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree that people outside of United States jurisdiction don't have the same protections as they would inside of the United States jurisdiction.
I mean, that goes without saying because the court interprets those phrases like persons versus citizens to, explicitly define who you're talking about. I just didn't understand what that conversation was about or where that argument was going, and I wanted to bring in some clarity.
Well, yeah, the argument is just that this person believes that due process only applies to citizens, and I said that's, Yo,
what's up, Edge? I kill see Rob versus Joven, just be fucking nonsense until one of them rage quit. I would pay $5 to see that. Yeah, I'd pay $10 to see that probably. Joven Bradley versus Rob Noor. Yeah, I would totally. The thing is, like Joven, like, have you ever seen that show, The Line? There's a channel called The Line, and they do like a lot of like, LGBTQ and atheist kind of stuff. Like Matt Dillahunty is on The Line. They have like a bunch of like different contributors, but Matt Dillahunty is one of them. He does all the atheists, secular humanist stuff. And then they have a bunch of other people that do either atheism or capitalism bad or LGBTQ, whatever. And so Joven's been kind of, I don't know if he's officially with The Line, but he's definitely been contributing to some of their shows recently. So yeah, but I would like to see like a death match between Joven Bradley and all the members of The Line versus like all the best right wing, all the best right wing creators. Rob Noor, BPF. Who else? Maybe Grid One Motorsports. And whoever else out there might be right wing. Isn't a great debater. Yeah, I've seen him. I mean, he's definitely, he made a name for himself, like donating to the Whatever podcast. But I've seen him in talks with Grumple. And I've seen him kind of make the rounds, basically. I agree. I don't think he is a great debater. But he doesn't have to be. He just brings some of that right-wing spice, just do a little right-wing Salt Bay action. That sounds healing, yeah. I've interacted with him a few times, but refused to go onto his streams. Yeah. I know Grumple talks to him a lot. I think, actually, Nonfon might talk to him once in a while. So yeah, I've seen him in a few streams.
Correctly stated that's not true, and that's really stupid. I know that. You know that.
Who hasn't read the Constitution, right? But you should be smarter than that, because if you're arguing with this guy, it's like, hey, that's due process, which is protected by the 5th and the 14th Amendment. When you're talking to somebody that's stupid, for the sake of viewership, because I really like your content, if they're just not informed on something and proceed to argue with you on it, it's just like, yeah, drop the call. You don't know what you're talking about. On top of that,
yeah, no, but I'm gonna point out the idiocies for basically as long as I can. I think it goes a long way, in my opinion. Some people disagree with me on this. I don't really care, but I think it goes a long way to make people like that look as stupid as possible, because it shows everybody else how dumb the position, specifically that MAGA America holds. And I think there's something to say about showing that their positions are really stupid.
That goes hand in hand with making fun of somebody like that. But you got to make it a little bit more clear that you're making fun of the guy, because then you have people who are in the comments like agreeing that he's owning you when you're not even.
Yeah, those are also MAGA.
Clarifying what the Constitution says.
Sure, those are also MAGA though. They are stupid. They are as stupid as he is. So there's really not much. Just so you know, at the start of that conversation, I pointed out that per the 5th and 14th Amendment, everybody has a right to due process. They all heard it. It doesn't matter. I pointed out that the Supreme Court reaffirmed this 3 to 4 times in the past 40 years. They don't care. They are straight up brainwashed in a cult.
So then my question for you is, do you think that the Republican Party is the party of Trump?
Now it is, yeah, 100%.
Okay.
100%.
What do you say about, like, I mean, I'm a young guy. This is like a shitty thing to say, but I just could not bring myself to vote in the last election. I didn't agree with Joe Biden's economic policy, and I also didn't agree with what Donald Trump had to say about women or immigrants.
Joe Biden did. Joe Biden wasn't the other candidate in the last election.
He dropped out halfway through. That's right. Kamala Harris came in with 100 days to go, and at that point, it feels a little bit shoot in instead of somebody actually winning over my vote, which is like, I don't know, maybe that might be a bit personal, but why do you think the Republican Party is the party of Trump? I want to say that I agree with, because
everybody that was against Trump got removed. He quite literally fired or got rid of or tried to get them fucking killed every person that didn't agree with him. So now he's surrounded by nothing but yes men. I haven't seen a single Republican who has decided to stand up to this motherfucker. And the ones that have jumped ship and are joining the Democratic Party. Like the one dude who's up for is it the Senate seat next year in fucking Florida? He jumped ship. He changed parties because he was like, yeah, this is stupid.
Yeah, I can't argue with you there. It's a moot point because I think you're right. What I would like to start the discourse about, though, is you were saying before that somebody that's Christian wouldn't be able to vote for Trump.
And they can vote for him. I would argue that they're not Christian. They don't follow anything anything Jesus Christ taught.
Before we go into like the specifics of like why I don't think that's right, do you think that making such a general claim as you're not a real Christian if you voted for Trump is like true to the word of what it means?
Yes.
Why?
Because I'm basing it off of
voting for people that vote for policy, not for person, which is the majority of the informed mass.
I don't believe
you're able to affect some type of. I promise I'll hear you out. Just let me get a little spiel in. People nowadays are actually voting for policy, and there's only so many people that can get that through. When you've got a candidate like Trump who's made it clear what policies he supports, and if you do find yourself aligned with those, you know that to some extent that there's going to be a push for that. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist on the other side, but I'm saying that's why people might bring themselves to vote for whomever. So to say that somebody's not, aligned with their religion because, one of those policies is getting pushed forward there as opposed to the other 99, it's like the bad apples argument, You can't say that the whole tree is rotten because there's one bad apple. So to call an entire group of people not Christian-like,
if you would have let me interject, I could have saved us like 5 minutes. The reason why they're not Christian is not because of any of Donald Trump's personal actions. It's because his policies go directly against what Jesus Christ taught.
But then, but you're making that same mistake where you conflate somebody's entire self, in this case, Jesus and all his teachings, for voting for Trump, meaning that you agree with his entire self and all his policies.
I'm basing this around.
Correlation does not amount to any type of
I'm not correlating anything. I'm basing this off of what Jesus Christ specifically said a person must do in order to get into heaven.
No, see, that's uninformed. Yes. What you're basing it off is over
Jesus Christ's words
of years of translations. Come on, let's show each other some respect. Because the specific point you just said is what Jesus said, and that's what it takes to be a true Christian. No, the scripture in and of itself has been translated over thousands.
Okay, show me the mistranslation of the sheep and the goats.
To multiple languages.
Show me the mistranslation of the sheep and the goats. Show me the mistranslation.
See, but you can't say that a single translation amounts to what something means. Because the point that I'm trying to make here is that what Jesus said is not like word for word what you find in the Bible. The whole point of the scripture is to get the message from it. Yes,
what was Jesus's message? What was the one thing Jesus, in all the stories of Jesus, consistently relayed over and over again?
Showing mercy and being kind.
It was helping the disadvantaged. It was helping the disadvantaged. It was him helping the lepers. It was him helping the prostitutes. It was him kicking people out who were trying to sell in his temple. It was him giving food and water to people that did not have it. Jesus's whole thing was the people in society who are the least of us need to be helped the most. It's why he said over and over again to rich people that you need to give away all your earthly possessions. You're not going to go to heaven with any of this. It's why he said time and time again to give money to the poor. Like, this was Jesus's whole thing.
Yes. I agree, but I think where you're confusing that there is what he is literally saying. For example, you said before, I think it's Mark, it's most of them. It's Matthew, Mark, and I think John or not Luke, where he says that whole give back to Caesar's what is Caesar's and to God what is God's. The modern interpretation of that, especially among like, I don't want to marginalize you, but about around people that use that quote incorrectly, is that he's supporting taxes here. No, he's saying give back to the man on earth what is a currency made up of the man on earth, but to the man on high, give the utmost respect to God what is God's. You would never belittle a God and be like, oh yeah, he's saying give that guy money. He's clearly saying, so give to Caesar's what is Caesar's. Worthless. It's fucking dirt. And not just that, but Jesus has consistently affirmed the role of a secular government, separating any type of spiritual, like any religion, from the civil duty. So to take it the opposite way and be like, hey, you're not following your religious duty if you're following your civic duty, that's not fair.
That's not the way I take it. So, I mean, maybe if you want to straw man, no, it's not. If you want to straw man my argument a little more, no, if you want to straw man the argument a little more, incorrect. But what when we say, hold on, I'm talking now. When we say, give to Caesar what is Caesar, give to the Lord, give to God what is God's, we're saying that your ethical obligation, your governmental obligation, doesn't conflict.
Your civil authority.
It doesn't conflict with your religious one. So paying taxes isn't like against the church. So when somebody says to me, well, I don't have to do what Jesus was saying to do in the way I vote, incorrect. Your religious side and your political side don't conflict with each other. In fact, they go like hand in hand, your civic side and your religious side, right? If you are voting in somebody that is going to directly go against all of the policies of all of the teachings of Christ, no, I'm sorry, you're not a fucking Christian at that point.
All right, and that's good on paper, like that's a good principle, but in reality, when it comes to making that action in America, these days, the only choice you have is to vote for one person or the other. And what doing is you're generalizing that vote for one or the other, or into the third party systems, whoever the fuck you want to vote for, as a reflection of somebody's entire religion. And yes, I do agree with you, because you're right. That is exactly what that scripture quote is saying. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's. That civil authority, and in hand that, that religious authority and being able to follow your God is just as possible. But I think it's very clear that you cannot, the action you're making as a human is voting for one person or the other, right? The policy implication that comes from that is widespread. So to call somebody a bad Christian,
if you know,
I think that's
if somebody says to you, right? If let's say I believe, let's create a fictional religious figure here. So I believe in Gargamel. Gargamel is my religious figure. And Gargamel specifically says in the religious text, hey guys, do not ever take somebody and dye their hair blonde. Just as an example, never dye someone's hair blonde. I, Gargamel, the Lord of all lords, says don't do this. And I'm chilling at home and it's an election year and two candidates are up on the screen. And one candidate goes, if I win, I will dye everyone's hair blonde. And I vote for that candidate. You think Gargamel's gonna be happy? Or do you think Gargamel's gonna look at me and be like, huh, well, I told you not to do this. And now you helped put someone into power who's going to directly do this.
You understand that the metaphor you're making is iron tight, because it's based on principle. And yeah, that's a good principle, but like I'm saying again, people, it's not that black and white, especially not in the two-party system where you're really just voting for one group or the other if you really want to affect some type of change.
Sure.
I understand the specifics of this, but yes, if your God told you not to do X and political whomever says do X, you're going against your religion in doing so. Right, but like, that argument could be made for specific policy on either side of the boat. Do you think it's fair
let's do that. Let's
for it?
Yes, yes, I do. Let's look at each side of the vote for a second. Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris.
Okay.
Donald Trump was pretty upfront, and the entire Republican Party has been pretty upfront that they want to cut SNAP benefits. They've been pretty upfront about this for a long time. It's been a platform they've run on for a while.
long before Trump. I wouldn't call it a Trump thing, but I will agree that the Republican Party is pushing
Yeah.
this.
The Democrats, Kamala Harris, had no policies about restricting food access. None. Zero. So if I'm looking, okay, Jesus says feed the hungry. Well, I can't feed the hungry over there, right? There's no way to do that.
This is true. But
Okay, but if I go over here, the hungry do get fed. Right?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm listening. Yeah.
If I side with Kamala Harris, the hungry will get fed because the Democrats don't want to remove any SNAP benefits. They actually want to make it easier for people to get on those benefits.
But a Christian would not say that the state should be your primary source of support. At that point, if they're looking to directly feed you and do it in a line, I don't know, being aligned with your religion, then the belief there is that the church and individuals should be that source of support, you know? It's not a matter of getting it done through your government, because then I can just as easily make the argument, and I don't personally believe this, I am supportive of SNAP benefits. However, the argument is made, especially by the Christian Republican groups, that creates dependency rather than actually helping these individuals, which is why there's, certain limits based on what part of the state.
Do you ever notice?
For example, I'm in New York City.
Just real quick, do you ever notice the contradiction of do you ever notice the contradiction of the passages are telling us that we have to personally do this, but I don't think we should personally do it through taxes? Do you ever notice the contradiction there?
I wouldn't call it a contradiction because, like I'm saying, even though you can believe something in principle, doing that in action is a completely different beast, especially when what you are actively doing as opposed to the effect that comes from it are two wildly different things. And in this case, voting for one person means that you're grouping yourself in with their overall tax policy, right? So even though I might not agree with, not to say that I did vote for Trump because I didn't vote for anything, but I don't know, say that I did fucking vote for Trump, even though I fully believe in everything that Kamala is doing, just on a religious standpoint for abortion or whatever type of nonsense argument that these MAGA heads are making. And again, I'm not coming from the MAGA standpoint. I'm coming from the Christian standpoint, which I'm not one of either. But point being, you can understand that their God said something to them on paper that has gone down for thousands of years, and it's really the message, the parable, I think is the word that's used. And taking that to guide your outcome. That's more for a day-to-day, what you're doing as a person and what you have effect over, Not so much as to what vote you're making and who's actually
your vote is, you do have an effect with your vote.
Yes, you do have an effect, but are you the person in there writing up that legal document? Are you?
No, you're just the person who put that person in charge.
But it's not the person that put them in charge; it's the party that puts them in charge. There's still these, party nominations.
You voted for the party. You voted for that party. When it came time for you to decide.
Did you vote for every single one of your local senators?
Yeah. Did I vote for all my local senators? No, because they didn't align. My local senators don't align with my views or my actions, so I didn't vote for them.
Right, but did you personally vote for every single person that's in your local area of jurisdiction?
Yes. Did I cast a vote? Did I cast a vote for somebody to be put into those positions? Yes.
Yeah. Do you think that's something that more than 2% of the American population does?
Probably not. I would say most of Americans are bad when it comes to their civic duty. Right.
So, and knowing that it's created this current mess that we're in today. I'm not saying it sucks that we have it, and I wish people would do things to change it, which is,
But you didn't do anything to change it.
Will cause.
You specifically said you didn't vote.
Right. I have no plans on voting too if I don't agree with the policy that somebody's pushing out there either.
What policy of Kamala Harris's did you disagree with?
Oh, dude, she's a woman. I got to be honest with you. You think that Kamala Harris is going out there
and having a policy,
conversation with Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin?
Look at him. Look at the camera like that. That sinister look he made.
You think that Kamala Harris is going out there and having a conversation?
That sinister look. I think did he say what policies did you disagree with? And he was just like, oh, she's a woman. And then he gives her that look. Amazing.
Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin in the midst of these wars? No fucking way in hell.
Were we expecting like a chuckle after that one, or?
Do you think I was making a joke? We've had a serious conversation this entire time. I am being dead serious when I tell you, do you think that the Russians and the Chinese care to have a conversation like that with a woman?
Yeah, they do all the time.
Really? Name one person that's done it successfully. Angela Merkel, buddy? What are you talking about? You're searching it up.
No, I'm not actually.
So you don't know of any woman that's ever done that before?
Do I know of any woman
But
who's
you're
ever
telling me it just
talked to
happened
China
with
before?
no basis in history.
Do I know of women who've talked to China before?
No, that have fucking argued with Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin on a government world stage.
You don't think women
I
could do
named
that?
Angela Merkel before, who's the only
You
one
don't-
that's had any type of
Wait,
public
wait. Just,
engagement.
you don't think women could do that?
It's not that I don't think women can do that. They could, by definition, do it. Not well enough that I would vote for them to do it.
Based on what?
For example, Angela
Based on
Merkel
what?
in Germany. The ones that we have seen and do have in power. Primarily Angela Merkel in Germany. She gets fucking stepped over. Their economy is in shambles. Are you kidding me?
So you've one example of one person, and that means no woman could do it.
Right, but you have none of any ever. I have one in modern day history that's actively happening and showing me that right now it's not going well. Not just that, but like the history of world government for it ever. Like, can you name one ever? I mean, even looking at Germany, back when they fucking annexed Crimea in 2014, and they still had to keep fucking trading with Russia, the EU tried putting all these economic sanctions on them. Russia said, fuck you, here's the counter sanctions on all your agriculture products. And even though Germany is one of their biggest economic partners for agriculture, Russia's retaliatory measures made their food exports go, like, plummeting. This is just one economic example of a woman in power arguing with either China or Russia, especially in modern history. That's just going back to me not wanting to vote for Kamala Harris.
Because she was a woman.
Yeah, because I'm a young American that doesn't want to have World War III. Above all other things, not having another
Because you
World War
believe a
was,
woman would lead to World War III.
Yes, I specifically, because you're generalizing my argument. I specifically think Kamala Harris, because of the fact that she is a strong, independent woman, would not be able to have that discussion with a Xi Jinping or a Vladimir Putin, who are oligarchs in their or fucking dictators in their respective countries. You are deluding yourself if you think that Kamala Harris is going out there and getting fucking Vladimir Putin out of Ukraine. Like, that's insane. She could barely get drug dealers out of America.
Has Donald Trump gotten Vladimir Putin out of Ukraine?
No, but he's had actual talks.
Did Biden get Vladimir Putin? Did Biden get Vladimir Putin out of Ukraine?
He did so by spending billions of taxpayer dollars on funding the war from Ukraine's side.
Vladimir Putin is still in Ukraine, though.
They're not actively in Ukraine.
Yes, they are.
I mean, yes, they are having an active war in Ukraine, but they're not like...
What? What?
Okay.
All right. I did Google it because I Googled it because I wanted to know. So regarding negotiation with Russia, Wendy Sherman, who was the U.S. Department Secretary of State, led critical negotiations with Russia in early 2020, which de-escalated tensions in Ukraine. So she actually helped de-escalate. Madeleine Albright, who was the first female U.S. Secretary of State, engaged directly with Russian leaders, including Vladimir Putin, and she played a significant role in NATO expansion and was known for her assertive diplomacy. Dahlia Grabowski.
Under whose presidencies?
What? She was the first female Secretary of State.
Under whose presidencies? Them being the first female Secretary.
Wait. You didn't say. Wait. The conversation was: has a woman ever successfully negotiated with Russia or China?
Okay, and we're talking about the level of office that is the presidency. As much respect as I do have for the
okay, hold
Secretary
on.
of State, she's still
but there's never been a woman president, so.
Which is why the closest example we have to anything of that would be the Prime Minister of Germany, who's been doing that for like the last 20 years.
Dahlia Grabowski, who was the president of Lithuania, successfully negotiated with Vladimir Putin. to help
Bro,
with
you're-
regional
you're-
security
you're
and energy
comparing
independence.
Lithuania to the United States.
You compared Germany to the United States. What's wrong with
Okay.
comparing Lithuania to the United States?
Lithuania is like a third world fucking country, bro.
You think
Germany has
Lithuania? You
been,
think
like, one of
Lithuania
the
is a
biggest-
third world country?
I said they're like a third world country. I'm
What
using
makes
that
them
word
like a
to
What makes
emphasize
them
how
like a
shitty of
third world country
Lithuania is.
specifically? What makes them like a third world country?
They don't have nearly the same GDP of first world countries.
They're in the G7.
So what? They're still not a Brazil, Russia, India, China.
I'm sorry. Do you know what the G7 is?
Educate me.
The G7 is a group of the world's biggest like economic countries.
Right, but who's
Like,
in it? Who's in it though? Who's in it though?
multiple countries are in it.
Name more than 3.
The United States is in the G7. Canada's in the G7. The UK is in the G7. I'm actually pretty sure Germany's in the G7. Australia, I think, is in the G7. Like what? India, I'm pretty sure is in the G7. What is the point here?
They're not. Like, you have no idea.
What?
It's the fucking EU, United States, UK.
Canada, France,
Canada,
Germany,
France,
United Kingdom, and United States. All 5 countries I just named. The only one I missed was Australia. The fuck are you talking about?
You're grouping in Lithuania as part of the European Union and talking about, oh, they're part of G7.
Uh-huh.
Bro. The mental gymnastics you have to do to get there to even begin to start
Okay, prove to
comparing-
me that Lithuania is a third world country. Go ahead.
Sure, their fucking GDP growth, the amount of inflation that they have. Do you mean to tell me
What
that
is
you
Lithuania's
specifically
GDP?
know
What is
that-
Lithuania's GDP? What's their GDP
Do you
growth?
know that?
What's their GDP growth?
Do you know that?
You're the one making the claim right now. You're making
Right,
the
but
claim
you're the
that
one that
based on
brought
their
up
no.
Lithuania.
You're
You're the one that
making the
brought up
claim
Lithuania because
that
I- okay,
based
no,
on their
let's fact check,
you
let's
brought
fact
up
check,
Lithuania.
let's
Oh well,
fact
I
check.
brought up
I didn't
Lithuania, and then you
compare
claimed
Germany
Lithuania
to
was a bad.
America.
Hold on, don't try to play this bullshit because I have the shit recorded. I said that the president of Lithuania, right, successfully negotiated with Putin. You said, well, Lithuania is like a third world country. So I'm telling you to prove that. And to prove that, you said, well, look at their GDP growth. What is their GDP growth? Don't make claims if you can't fucking back them up.
2023, 2.2% in 2024, expected to be under 3% in 2025 and 2026.
Uh-huh. And what does that prove?
It proves that they're not growing at nearly the same rate that America is. And to that point, you brought up Lithuania and you defended them as being not like a third world country because they're part of the G7, even though they're part of the European Union, which is part of the
Sorry,
G7.
what was
So they're
Lithuania's GDP growth? What was Lithuania's GDP growth again?
What year? Because I said a couple.
The most recent.
0.3%.
Okay.
What's
Is
up,
their
Wallaby?
GDP growing?
So
So
in
it is
comparison to the American economy.
Oh, well, hold on. America is a larger economic country.
That's the fucking point I'm making. That America is a much larger economic country, has a lot more power than somebody like Lithuania.
So then Lithuania should be worse at negotiating then. So Lithuania should be worse at negotiating, stupid.
Listen for more
Oh
than
my
2
God,
seconds,
you're
bro.
fucking dumb.
You're comparing the Lithuanian president arguing
Uh-huh.
with Putin to the American president arguing with Putin. And then to back up the fact that they're not nearly the same types of countries is the fact that they're not within the same economic hemisphere. Brother, Lithuania is fucking shit on the boots of the average American.
Your
Are you
claim,
serious?
your claim was that women cannot successfully negotiate with Putin. I gave you an example
you asked
of
me
a
why I
woman.
didn't
No.
vote for Kamala. I
Your
said
claim was women can't negotiate with Putin or with the head of China. That was your claim. Don't try to walk that
wasn't
back
my
now.
claim.
Yes, it was.
That wasn't my claim.
You want to bet?
No, I said specifically Kamala Harris could not argue.
And when I asked you why,
did
you
not
said
get my
because she's a
vote
woman.
Because she is a woman. Right.
Therefore,
And then
women
for
cannot
further
successfully
context,
argue.
because a woman is not going to be able
Bro,
to
you're
have that
so
conversation
dishonest.
with
It's
a Vladimir
hilarious.
Putin or a Xi Jinping.
You're so intellectually dishonest. It's fucking hilarious. So
From
again, you
what?
believe
Because
women
you
can't.
specifically said
You
I did not
believe
vote.
women can't successfully negotiate with Putin.
That is a crazy mental gymnastic from what I said to what you're conflating it to mean.
I'm sorry. Let's
No,
just go through
I
this
said
again.
that
Let's
I
just
did
go
not
through
vote
this
for
again.
Kamala Harris.
Why shouldn't Kamala Harris be president? Because she's a woman. What's wrong with her being a woman? She wouldn't be able to negotiate with Putin. So where's the logical leap when I said you don't think women are able to negotiate with Putin? Where's the logical leap there, my
Because
guy?
I'm giving you a contextual basis that is history. No, the logical leap comes from me giving you a contextual basis of American history.
Great.
Right?
Do
And then
you
the
believe
closest thing that
women
we
can
compare that
successfully
to, the next
negotiate with
biggest
Vladimir
country is
Putin?
Germany.
Do you believe women can successfully negotiate with Vladimir Putin? Yes or no?
Right.
Yes or no? I just want a yes or no. Okay, well, here's an example of a woman who
It's not a yes or
successfully.
no question. It's not a
Yes,
yes or
it
no
is.
answer.
Yeah.
All right, I gotta go. It's 5 in the morning. I'm gonna be up in a couple hours. Thank you, Grand, Edge, Conrad, Amelia, Maida, Grand, Globalize, Casey. I'll see you guys later. I'll send you over to Gustix. So I'll see you guys later. Probably on tomorrow. It's gonna be like this for a couple weeks though, just me working. So if I'm not like, hey, what's up? Let's stream and fucking have a good time. You know, it's just because I'm working. So, but yeah, go say hi to Gustix. I'll see you guys later. Peace.